I
Ship
actually
is-
really like that word.
Is stable and on time. Yeah.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting for Tuesday, November the 7th, starting at 4 p.m. We've got these, thank you everybody for arranging to come a half an hour early. We have some big agendas over the next few meetings before we get into 2024. So I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather, the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinix people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Is there any late items, councillors? Seeing none, we're moving on to item 4, adoption of the agenda. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor? And opposed, and that carries. Thank you. And so we have adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody see any errors and omissions regarding December 12th, 2023 regular council minute meetings? If I could have a mover then. Moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Thank you. On to item 6. So we got 2 things coming up here, and hopefully if we don't have enough time for council reports, we'll just maybe put them aside today. But we've scheduled in here an hour for the third quarter financial update. And it looks like we have the chief financial officer is sitting up here to my left. So I'm assuming that I'm going down to the end of the table to ask Amy to do the presentation of the third quarter financial updates. So over to you, Amy.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. CFO Jury's here as well in case there's any hard-hitting questions, but no big surprises today, I don't think, so we'll go through as we planned. So we'll start with some operating revenue, operating expenses, and then touch on a few capital projects that we have ongoing right now. Just a reminder that quarter 3 is up until the end of September, so we do still have a little bit left before we get to the year-end financial statements. So we'll start with the operating budget, or the operating revenue. Taxes have been billed and collected as expected. Sales and service has seen a decrease in the IRSUs, the Integrated Road Safety Unit, that we typically receive during the year. However, this has been offset with some proceeds from the Civic Center boiler insurance claim. So it is almost the same as last year. Conditional grants, you can see that big spike in the middle of the chart there. That includes the $4.2 million from that Growing Communities grant that we received early in the year. That will be transferred to the Growing Communities Reserve at the end of the year. Now looking at it a little bit differently, so this is a percentage of the year budget. So some things we expect to be 100% like taxes, some other things, sales of service, we would more likely see them at the 75% mark at this point. Investment income is well ahead of last year and budget as the Bank of Canada has held steady on interest rates throughout the year. It should be noted that a majority of this investment income will be allocated to those direct reserves that generates reserve income and not for general operations. Down below in transit user fees, they're on par.
Sorry.
Yep.
Councillor Payne.
Do we know what that percentage is that's allocated to reserves and what would be available for?
I don't have that one handy.
Okay.
CFO Jury, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I'd just be guessing, so maybe I shouldn't. But yeah, it's
I can follow up.
yeah, it's
I just sort of got to
the vast majority of it goes into our reserves, which is still a really positive thing.
It
right?
is a very positive thing. I always love to see that.
Yes.
Okay.
Jumping down to transit user fees, they're on par with prior year and budget. The 2023 year started off a little bit lagging behind the pre-COVID levels. However, we did see that in September, it's shown an increase back to 100%, which a trend we hopefully will continue with. The library received the RDCK contribution after quarter 3 cutoff. but this has been offset with the library enhancement grant that was received during the year.
Can I just ask a question just on taxes? Do we get some taxes later in the year, and what taxes are those?
Yeah, we get some of those provincial grants in lieu that come in the fall, kind of around now. So
Okay.
we're usually not quite at 100%, and then we get that little tip at the end there that puts us at the 100%.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so those are yet to come in, okay.
Yes.
And do we know in terms of taxes, did we see an increase by any chance of people that didn't pay their taxes this year, or did we see more
Yeah.
deferrals to, for those over 55 to?
Yeah. I haven't checked the deferrals, but I know on the penalties, they were pretty similar to last year, if that's an indication, the penalty charges. So I don't think there was an uptick on the number of people that didn't pay on time, but the deferment's an interesting question. I'll see if I can get some numbers for that, but
Yeah,
good to
maybe
know.
you can
Yeah.
just bring that to one
Yeah.
of the other upcoming budget meetings. That's always interesting, because I've noticed over the last few years, there's that slow increase in people that are deferring their property tax, which always leads one to think about the fact that, you know, there are precariously housed or overhoused people for sure within the city of Nelson. So anyways, thank you.
Moving on to the operating expenses. General government includes the budgeted changes to the HR department, as well as a fully operational Nelson Next team. There was one more member than back in 2022. They started late in 2022. That was fully grant funded. It also includes the COVID restart funded expenses related to the digitization of city records that had only just begun in 2022. Protective services are trending in line with budget for 2023, as the police department has faced many challenges with officer turnover and a reduction in the URSU program and the corresponding funding. We do have 2 new officers that have joined the team this fall and 1 recruit that is scheduled to join the team in January. In recreation and cultural services, there's that slight uptick from last year due to the $200,000 of COVID recovery grants that we distributed early in the year. Looking again at a percentage of the budget, we notice the public health and welfare services is typically higher in the first 3 quarters than the last quarter, just due to some seasonality of the departments.
Maybe you could just explain what public health and welfare services are.
That's primarily cemetery.
Thank you.
Sort of counterintuitive, I don't know.
Nelson Hydro operating expenses are forecasted to come in just slightly over budget, as you may recall from Scott's hydro budget meetings this past few weeks. And an increase, mostly due to an increase in power purchases and regulatory expenses. Moving on to capital projects, unless there's some
Very
questions on operating.
quiet. Counselors, no questions? Okay. Oh, keep on going.
The notes were excellent. They
go.
are excellent, so it's just sort of a.
And I just, if I can jump in for a sec, you know, we did water and wastewater, we did hydro, so we're kind of biting off some of these big pieces as we do our budget. So we're going to do resource recovery on Thursday. So yeah, as Amy and I were going through this, it's like, well, a lot of this stuff we've sort of already gone through, so we're just sort of looking at those other little bits now.
Awesome. So first up is the NG 911. So we're in line with our original plan. The teams received the RFP documents from the consultant, and our next step is to post that RFP for bidders. Just a reminder that this will be hopefully live, or must be live by 2025, or spring of 2025. During the summer, the staff received a cybersecurity strategy, which recommended a 3-year implementation plan. Some of these one-time costs and as well as ongoing costs will be included in our 2024 5-year financial plan that will be coming in the next couple months.
No, maybe I'll just add, I think both Chris's and I attended a workshop put on by FCM that basically had the Canadian Cyber Security Center and others that were basically talking about this. They did say local governments are particularly at risk because we have critical infrastructure that needs to operate, so we tend to be a target because they know that. Message I heard was that it's not if you will be hit, it's when you will be hit. What's critical is that we actually develop a recovery plan. How do we get back up and operating as soon as possible and make sure our data can be restored and we can get back into operation. And as more and more devices are added to our system, SCADA, smart meters, et cetera, that just opens up more and more channels to be attacked. They give even an example that they are starting to send resumes to HR departments, and when you open that resume, then you are infecting your system. So we have done one thing. They said, I think there was about 5 presenters, and one of them, they all had, what's your recommendation? One did speak about MFA, multi-factor authentication, and we have done that. So we have started to take some steps, but we have lots of work to do in that area. We've been a pretty closed system for most of the time. None of our utilities, etc., are actually controlled by SCADA. Our SCADA actually is providing information. So if an alarm gets set off in the sewage treatment plant, that information will go to our operator, and then they manually have to go and address that issue in our plant. So we're not a municipality where valves, etc., are being controlled by SCADA or anything else that that puts you at risk that somebody else could be controlling those valves and filling your water system with a whole bunch of chlorine or something like that obviously would cause harm in your community. So right now we're pretty locked down, so our risk is less, but certainly we have a lot of work to do on cybersecurity.
Any questions? Okay.
I gained a whole new respect for dual factor authentication. I used to sort of curse it when it happened, and now I'm like, thank you, I will do that, yes. It was great.
Moving on to the food cyclers. Staff are continuing to distribute these to the Fairview residents. Today we have over 900 units distributed within the city, and the team will be coming to council on Thursday to provide a more in-depth update. The facilities asset management plan, staff are continuing to test and refine the strategy tool. They will also be providing a full update to council on November 21st. A lot of my presentation is just deferring to the experts. For the Civic Center, staff are continuing to consider various project options and will be monitoring the snowpack on the current roof. Unfortunately, there has not been an update on the accessibility grant as of today, despite staff requesting one.
Maybe then when the grant came out and they said we'd know by the end of summer, we forgot to check whether or not that was 2023 or 2024 on the date of the,
Maybe even 2020.
or maybe 2025, yeah. I haven't heard of any community hearing anything about the grants that they applied for, so.
I went to their site. I did notice that they did make a couple announcements, one for the CNIB building somewhere in eastern Canada, another similar nonprofit, but I certainly haven't, they were two this year, and it was a ongoing grant, so there's definitely ones from years past, but yeah, not sure what's happening. One thing that I think that we should lobby for is, it would be better for us to actually know as soon as possible that we didn't make the short list and we can plan elsewhere versus being in this black box for months upon months and not being able to plan what we do next. So it's really disruptive. So maybe our FCM directors or colleagues, we can maybe ask them to try to bring that forward, because it really makes it really difficult to plan these projects.
Moving on to some smaller facility items. The Front Street demo is complete with the project finishing slightly over budget. City Hall front doors are substantially complete with some minor finishing and programming to be completed. I do think they look quite nice down there, and they're working as planned, which is nice. The contract has been awarded for the City Hall elevator door control system to be replaced. An RFP is pending to replace and retrofit the remaining equipment. The fire hall study has moved to the land acquisition stage. Staff are working to identify possible sites.
The city elevator project, I know it's in the 2023 budget, but I'm sort of thinking that this is, I don't know, what day is today, November the 7th? I take it that this is just gonna roll over into 2024?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea was to do a replacement of those elevators, but yeah, that's clearly not happening this year. The bulk of that's getting rolled forward to next year as we get a bit more of an idea of what's involved. I think Sam's kind of doing it in a bit of components here, so.
Moving on to parks and public amenities. Our wayfinding signage has been or will be ordered by the end of the year, and then will be installed by city staff during 2024. The Welcome to Nelson signs, the art panels are being fabricated, and the planning department is working with First Nations to commission the art to go below. Down at Cottonwood Park, staff are installing storm infrastructure in the parking lot. A contractor was selected for the bridge replacement, and it's expected to begin early December.
Do we have an up-to-date drawing of that work? Is that, I
This
should
is-
reach out to Development Services?
I can ask Sebastian. This is the
That's-
latest one here.
I'm pretty sure that's not what they're doing. I've been down there. Chris, what do you think?
The photo on the left was taken at lunchtime today,
Yeah,
but
I'm talking about the photo on the right.
Yeah. I think that's pretty close. We moved the sidewalk. It originally was going to be on the building side. We moved it to the highway side. What are you thinking?
Oh, interesting. Maybe
I
I
don't
was-
think that, I think Leslie's right, there's a big, well, like,
Oh, right.
on
Yes.
on the corners, the other corners.
Yeah, I think that's the.
I mean, I
yeah, that was the one
was down there a
change.
couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago, but it looked to me like the sidewalk had moved to the other side and they had bulb outs on both sides, but I'm just interested in
Okay, yeah.
what it's gonna look like.
We did the opposite. This is the original plan, and then we moved the sidewalk.
I think this might have been an intermediary plan, because I remember there was an original plan on the back,
Yeah.
and then they made some changes, and I was down there for something else. I was picking up some stuff at a marketing guy, and
Yeah, you are right, but we created a bulb out on, is that silica? So that if a truck comes down, they can get turned around without having to drive through the parking lot and the lanes. That was definitely one change that happened.
Okay, we can look into that. For the pier project, the pier and the Ladybird building is set to be completed this fall. The canopies, gangways, and floating dock will be completed and installed in March of 2024.
Mayor?
Yes.
Good, so it should be ready to go for next summer, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
That's the hope here?
And Chris Johnson might have a few comments to add onto that.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. We anticipate, and just to recap, I'm not sure if I heard Amy correctly there. But yeah, so the Ladybird building is in sort of its final stages. The gangway steel transition ramps are in place. And now, actually on Thursday, the construction, they'll be starting to put up the steel for the canopy. And so that process will happen. And then the issue with the final issue will be the cedar planking around the canopy. And that the contractor doesn't want to do that in the winter for a number of reasons. So that they're going to be waiting until we anticipate March, and that'll be open. So yes, it will be open and functioning for the summer.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Lockwood?
Will it be functioning at all this winter?
That's a good question. We'll have to check once the steel gets put up and see if we will be removing fencing and sort of opening it up without the cladding available there, or if it's easier to keep the fencing in place because you have the demob fees for around that fencing and stuff for the work that happens. So that'll be something that we'll have to assess when we get there.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay.
Oh, I had questions on those. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
Councillor
I just
Tate.
wanted to get to the end of the capital one. I do have questions, but it kind of goes back to this, which is like where all these projects are coming from. So this is the one from March. I noticed in here, just because we're getting a lot of feedback about bear bins right now, that in here there's listed the bear bins for the parks, because we finished off all of the actual city parks, the ones that we actually own and maintain and take care of, all have bear bins. But on here, it also said, there was another one, sorry, I should have just highlighted it. Where are you, bear bins? It says downtown bear bins, and that's for next year. So are those the Baker Street, is that what that means? Because we're coming up to next year and we're looking at next year budget, is that still?
And Charlie will be joining us on Thursday
So that
as
we
well.
can talk about it on Thursday. Okay, I had a question about that. And then the other one that I had a question about was the fire hall location study. So that is a capital project, so it would be in here somewhere?
Correct.
It's part of the 70,000 for the fire hall?
I can't remember if it's part of the fire hall or under facilities.
Oh, okay. Just
I
trying to make
can-
sense of the world where I'm a new guy, right? Facilities, there was 70,000 for fire hall?
Yeah, it was
here?
probably within that 70,000.
Okay, cool.
I can double check for you though.
Sure, no, it just kind of pulled all the pieces together.
Just on the bear bins piece, I had a note from Charlie from this morning.
Yeah.
So we did 34 bear bins in the parks.
Yes.
And we have 6 additional bear bins in inventory, so we may be looking to purpose those out somewhere for next year.
Yeah, and I would just note the 6, as far as the Baker Street, I think that there's some discussion. Kootenai Lake Tourism had been successful with the grant, so we're still kind of waiting to understand exactly how that looks. And as I understood it was for the region, but CAO might have more information on that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we did note that the Nelson Kootenai Lake Tourism had applied for funding for bear bins. Not sure how that impacts us or not. I'm not sure if we've made a decision what kind of bear-proof bins are appropriate for our downtown. Are they just the standard ones, or are they ones that more fit with the street furniture that we want in our downtown? So I think we need to kind of look at that. I'm not sure we're just going to install one that would be in the park in the downtown, or it would be something different.
Thank you.
Moving on to the official community plan, the planning department has wrapped up the public engagement phase and are busy getting together the What Have We Heard report. They will be sharing that with council later in November as well. They also have had a consultant helping update the housing need report as part of the OCP update requirements.
Just a note, I think everyone's seen the recent announcements by the province on housing that, basically the model that will come into effect, assuming the legislation passes as proposed, is that that you're required to do the housing needs report. That informs your OCP. And as long as your OCP or zoning has to be consistent with your OCP, so there will be less, local governments will not be able to use rezones to get amenity contributions, etc. They did, on the call I was involved in, they said there will be some tools that will come out because they do recognize that things like housing contributions, all those sorts of things come from some of those rezones, but as long as what the proposed project is fits with your OCP, that's where the consultation happens, not at a rezone as it does presently. So that's the model that's coming forward, and that's basically the progression. Update your needs plan. How are you going to meet the housing needs in your community? That has to be reflected in your OCP, and then your land use planning has to be consistent with that OCP, that there are those the lands or the properties are zoned in a way that allows you to meet those needs. Forget what the terminology for single family residential lots, I can't remember what that acronym is, but they're coming out right now that you're required to allow 3 dwellings on a single family lot, which is consistent with what we allow now, and then they are looking at the next round. Would they require additional development or allow additional development without zoning on single family lots? So those will be minimum requirements. Obviously, local governments can provide higher density, but this current model, and as you know, here we do, most of our lands are zoned for what the intent of those lands are. And we don't hold zoning like other municipalities do to secure other amenity contributions. We generally rezone, and we have our zone set for density in those areas that we believe there should be density, but all those things will sort of now be required to be in your zoning. So that's the new model coming forward. So ultimately it will affect the OCP, but it really all starts with making sure that you have a solid housing needs assessment, that you have a plan of how you can accommodate that growth in your community, and there'll be certain zones that are in place as a right. Clearly that doesn't mean someone's required to add that type of density to their single family lot. It just means that they have that right to do if they so choose.
Moving on to vehicles and equipment. Substantially all vehicles and equipment that were budgeted for in 2023 have been delivered. The remaining 2 are still expected to arrive by the end of the year, which is a nice increase from the past few years when we've struggled to have things come in on time.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Woodward.
So this sort of seems like it's telling us that the supply chains are configuring themselves back to kind of a bit of normal. Do you think it was like?
I think timing-wise,
Okay.
maybe. I know Jody's been, Jody and his team have been really good at managing the costs of things, because I think that is still affected by the supply chain.
Okay.
But he's gotten some good deals on some items that have kind of balanced out some areas where we haven't had
Okay.
success.
Are
I think
we,
if we were to look back, I think you'd see that a number of these things have been on the list for actually quite a long time. So I wouldn't feel confident in saying that the supply chains have caught up, because some of these things, we knew we couldn't get them and they were priced,
right,
you know, crazily, so
yeah, okay. Because it
it
was.
does take a long time.
It was such a challenge to like keep it all rolling forward, because we kept, things just
Yeah.
didn't appear.
Well, I think we should be thankful that we have Jody Cayley and the
Yes.
excellent workforce in the garage that actually know how to fix things and can keep our vehicles so well maintained that it's not like we're having to Band-Aid them. There's actually, you know, they've come to the end of use for us, but I think that we often are even selling those because they're still, they're probably still good for somebody in terms of some more use. So I think that's where we need to be really thankful that we might have been struggling. I think we were able to maintain all services with the equipment and vehicles we had on hand for the last 4 years, so.
Thank you.
I think we've also adjusted our expectations on when things are going to arrive, or at least adjusted our plans to say, okay, if we want this to show up in 2024, we better order it now versus, you know, how we were in years past where it's like, oh, okay, we can probably get that in the next few months. So we're conscious of that too, and just doing things earlier, and not just with vehicles, with other things too, and having things in inventory and making sure that we've got a good supply of things that we need. Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor Tate.
Thank you. So help me understand. So if we order a fire pumper truck, which I don't think we ordered this year, that's not on our list from this year. That's way long ago. Yeah. When does that come out of the budget? Does it come out when you order it?
No, once it's
it's
here,
here.
ready to go.
So then does
Yep.
it not have to show somehow in the budget this year? I don't
Yeah.
remember fire pumper truck. I'm like, oh,
We-
that sounds great.
Yeah, we expected that to come this year, and we still might. I haven't paid for it yet.
Yes.
It's, you know, so as soon as we
Yes.
do that, then they'll deliver it. You know, it might show up early next year, in which case we just roll that budget forward to next year, but
I think the question is it in the 2023
Yes.
financial plan?
yes.
Is it?
Council.
It is,
Okay, I
yeah.
just can't always understand. all
Yeah,
the
no, it's in
lines.
So it
2023.
should be,
Yep.
is there do you have the schedule of vehicles there? That's where
No, we don't
it
have a
shows up.
I don't
There's
think
no
I have a
breakdown?
schedule
Yeah.
of vehicles.
Okay.
But we
That-
also had,
That's where it will show up.
Oh, okay.
we also had
Thanks.
a capital reserve for that.
Yes.
It's not like we're
Correct.
looking for.
Equipment replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all
it
ready
should
to
be in
So
the,
it's in there somewhere.
yeah. it should be in
Fire,
there.
1.048 million.
There you go.
That's a pumper truck.
Yep.
That sounds right. Okay, see, I'll find it. Thank you.
Get your calculator out there.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, you know, the timing of when we actually receive things, you know, we clear, you know, these things come out of reserves, so, you know, that if it was scheduled to come out in 2023 and that doesn't happen, that reserve is 1.4 million higher than we anticipated, and then it gets drawn down the next year, so it's really just a timing of that movement in that reserve. It
Like
doesn't-
all that civic center stuff all gets shuffled.
Right,
All the
and-
peer project stuff gets shuffled.
Yeah.
Because those are big ticket items that aren't actually being withdrawn this.
So those reserves will be at higher levels at the end of 2023 than we anticipated, but they will be drawn down in 2024 when the actual expenditure happens.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions?
Oh, I do. I have one more question. Sorry, I do. Because
Okay,
like I was
well.
trying to compare this to
Yeah,
the thing
that's
we got
fine.
in
Take-
March.
Take your time, Counselor Tate. We're this has taken half an hour. I had put it an hour because
Because I giggled.
we've never had enough time in past years to ask questions, so we've got question time.
Great. And maybe, Mr. Johnson, you might be able to address this. I'm curious about the downtown waterfront improvement that was part of the capital budget that has festival lighting and public art. I don't know if that's like an ongoing thing in the financial plan. It looks like an ongoing thing, but I haven't seen it highlighted in the presentation. So I was curious what that looks like. Or maybe you know.
Speak to that?
Yeah, it is an ongoing piece.
Okay.
Like the downtown art, that's, yeah, we fund that through the Joy Barrett.
Cultural Development
There,
Committee.
yeah.
Cultural
Cultural
development.
Yes, thank you. so that, yeah, it's just sort of an ongoing annual piece, but it's not really capital, but it is funded out of that reserve was the idea, so that's why we just have it as a couple of line items in there.
And as far as the,
Continuous improvement.
Yeah,
well, as far as the decorative lighting, we did do a review of what the lifespan of that lighting is, because I can't remember if it's every 5 years we have to replace that lighting, so we basically said we can manage this many blocks with that budget, because we're gonna have to, replace whatever the first 3 blocks of Baker Street in 2024, because it was coming to the end of life. So what you see, we've built out what we have budget for right now to be able to replace that. And when I was first here, we had expanded our downtown lighting quite substantially, and by the time 3 or 4 years down the block, we had trees with 1 light in it,
still
and we
operational.
just said, let's do less well than try to do more poorly, and so we've really restricted. Here's where we actually have budget to maintain that lighting, because it's trying to expand beyond that just means it looks terrible.
It's the tree lighting.
Yes, that's the downtown.
Okay,
That's the decorative lighting. Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
With regards to the lighting, will that be integrated into the wayfinding as that's built out, or is that just in terms of like lighting area? I remember Councillor Page talked about lighting areas for wayfinding and how that would, it's a nice feature. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as, I don't think that's part of the strategy for the wayfinding signage. It's not part of that budget. That's certainly something council can consider, whether we want to expand lighting. Like we said, I think if you're going to expand it, you just need to make sure that we're budgeting to replace it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, I'm just gonna give Councillor Tate a moment as she's going through her spreadsheets.
Still learning.
Well, it's an education for all of us. You ask very good questions, so.
Thank you. Oh, I did
Take your
find the
time.
pumper truck in here. There it is. Vehicles and equipment. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
So
Councillor Payne.
So I'm comparing the percentage remaining from 2023 to 2022, and most of the items are lined up pretty coherently, so we're in a similar financial position, healthy moving forward into the end of this year. There's no real outliers or anything that we need to be concerned about, I guess is.
no, I mean, I look at some things like, maybe Parks is a little bit over where it was last year, but, that makes sense. We had a light snow year and we kind of transitioned to Parks earlier. So then your transportation service is a little lower because we don't have the snow removal in there. So when you see something a little higher, there's usually a reason, and there's something else that's a little lower. So yeah, I felt comfortable with what we were seeing for Q3 here.
Okay, perfect.
We're still at risk of, forget, meter of snow on December 24th, and the weather risks are always there, right?
And could we have the meter of snow on a non-statutory holiday, please, city manager? So we'll talk about maybe on the 27th or something like that, where we have a full crew on staff, not the day before Christmas.
Only at Whitewater.
Only.
They had some nice shots up there from this morning that I saw. So they got a nice dusting overnight. So, Councillor Page.
Just something for the consideration on that snow budget. I know, I don't have the map in front of me, but I'd been seeing in one of the meetings I'd been in that, well, most of the provinces expected with this year to see below average snowfalls. This area is one of the highlights for above average, just the way the weather maps were being laid out in that meeting. So we may want to expect more precipitation, not less this year.
I would maybe just speak to that a little bit, hearkening back to my previous years where I looked a lot at weather maps. precipitation is a pretty difficult thing to forecast for them, outside of sort of a 72-hour window.
Yeah.
And those maps typically are looks at probabilistically the chance that we will exceed an average year. So I think, it's not necessarily, if it's real darker shade, it's just, there's a higher probability that potentially we could. I think more what it speaks to is that we're in an El Nino year, which for our region typically means more moisture. And if we have other atmospheric influencers that can actually link up with that El Nino sort of moisture path, then that's where we start getting into really heavy years. But historically, we see warmer temperatures during El Nino years and higher moisture. So town, like I already told my two daughters to, it's entirely possible that we'll have a green Christmas, rather than a white one. But yeah, just to sort of provide a bit more context around that precipitation forecast. I know it's one of the favorite things for all skiers to do now is trying to figure out exactly how high the wasps' nests are and, or how many berries are on the mountain ash trees. These are all indicators. So, but yeah, it is a difficult thing, and usually that 72-hour window is when we'll know how much we'll get. But I think it probably speaking more to just the precipitation that we'll be seeing because it's an El Nino year and we get that, Pineapple Express coming up from the Pacific.
Yep.
And just to follow up on that, thank you for the question, Councillor Page. Chris, maybe during one of the budget the Chris and Chris team with Amy, is perhaps if we could have, I think our regular meetings are pretty full right now, but if during one of the budget sessions, which are all recorded, we could maybe have Charlie come and talk again about snow plowing and how we go about snow plowing. So if we stay kind of green through December, maybe early January, but maybe one of the budget meetings might be appropriate. Again, just for council to review all of that, because after parking, actually, I don't know which one comes first, snow removal or parking or snow removal, but probably a very key issue that we hear from citizens all the time. So it would be good to review that in a public setting, and that also a good reminder for all of us when we are asked those questions about how the snow removal business works here in town. So if you could just keep that in the back of your mind, that would be super. Councillor Tate.
That ding's a new question for me because I remember hearing within these meetings that leaf removal actually costs more than snow removal. I don't know if I made that up, but I remember hearing it somewhere. I thought it was here at this table. And it occurred to me that the leaves that get removed might make sense to go to the new compost facility. Is that happening? I'm just curious about that because that's like a big volume of compostable material. How does that look in the way that with our new facility in the RDCK? Anyone?
I can say that.
Yeah.
Popcorn.
We're giving it to Chris Jury to put through his food cycler.
Slow going, but I'll get there.
I think they use it in operations to a big extent, or we compost it on site. It would be your trucking costs of getting it out there, but
Okay.
we can. I think we've traditionally sort of composted it ourselves, but do you know anymore?
Yeah. Yeah, I can find out for you. The cemetery is one of the depots for that. I know that at the transfer stations, they also have the sort of yard waste tents this time of year, but I don't think that would be an appropriate application for that.
And does that yard waste go to the new composting facility? It does. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Any further questions for Amy regarding the third quarter? So, job well done again. Thank you so much. Thank you for the update. Thank you for the excellent notes. I really appreciate the notes. They're so clear. It does kind of leave it so that people don't have questions, but sometimes the odd question comes up to explain the note a little bit more in detail. But thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
And can we just point out for anyone watching online that all of this information is available at the click of the button if you go to and it does give an excellent explanation of what a lot of those line items are, which if you're just looking at the numbers, it can be a little overwhelming if that's not the way you sort of look at the world. But I learned even more this year than last year based on the notes that accompanied those numbers.
Okay. So our next item up is 6B, short-term rental regulation update. And Valerie is in from the planning department, and Seb has joined in beside her. And so they're going to do a presentation. It's only going to be a few minutes, so if everybody can just hold on to their questions until the end of the presentation, that would be super. So over to you, Valerie. Thank you.
Good evening. So I will provide a short-term rental regulations update. We'll start with a brief overview of the newly released provincial legislation. Then we'll have a look at the short-term rental landscape in the city of Nelson and how the new regulations will affect the current license holders. We'll do the same for tourist accommodations. And finally, we will look at we will talk about the different steps that city staff will be taking to adjust to the new regulations and ensure a smooth transition for all operators. So earlier this year, the province introduced the Homes for People Action Plan. The objective is to speed up delivery of new homes, increase the supply of middle-income housing, fight speculation, and help those who need it the most. To do so, the province is coming up with new legislation in different areas, and one of these areas is short-term rentals. Some of the key action items related to short-term rentals will be to provide new and/or stronger enforcement tools for municipalities and regional districts, increase platform accountability and data sharing, limit short-term rentals to principal residences, and establish a provincial registry. So to start with a short-term rental in the city of Nelson, these are licenses we issue in residential zones and some mixed-use and comprehensive development zones. In 2023, the city issued 127 licenses. People can choose different lengths of licenses. As you can see on this diagram, most of the licenses we issue are annual licenses, so 101 this year. Then we have 4-month licenses and 31-day licenses. People can also choose to rent different kind of spaces. So it could be entire homes or apartments, secondary suites, bedrooms, or laneway houses. Laneway houses, I'll note that it's only for laneway houses that have been built prior to 2018. The current regulations, so as you could see on this, the previous slide, we have different options in terms of length and space that you can rent. We have requirements such as principal residence, parking, inspection. It is a yearly renewal system, so the renewal is not automatic. Every year, the license holders have to submit a new application. This ensures that it gives the opportunity to for us to make sure the licenses are in good standing and that all the requirements are still met. We also have quotas, citywide quotas, 110 for annual licenses. We're currently at 101, and 40 for the 4-month licenses. We're currently at 24. And we also have a quota per block, so it allows a maximum of 3 licenses per block. And these quotas have been established to balance the demand for short-term rental versus the need for long-term housing. So how the new regulations will impact the current license holders. One of the key requirements from the province is the principal residence requirement, which we already have for short-term rental license holders, so there won't be much change here. The other requirement is to post the municipal business license number on their listing. if you don't post that number, basically the platform, so it could be Airbnb, VRBO, could remove your listing altogether. There's also a provincial registry requirement, and you will have to post that provincial registration number on your listing as well. That is new from the province. We don't have that currently in the municipal bylaw. And sorry, I forgot to mention the requirement above the municipal business license number that has to be posted on the listing. It is currently a requirement as well under the municipal regulations. Short-term rental definitions. So currently the city defines short-term rental as temporary accommodation of 30 days or less. The province has announced a new definition, or new for us, it will be a temporary accommodation of 90 days or less. So the city will have to adjust their definition to match the province definition. And other municipal requirements such as quota parking inspection will still apply. Tourist accommodation. So these licenses are issued in some commercial zones, multi-use zones, and we have issued 36 licenses in 2023. 14 of them are for hotels, motels, and hostels, and the other 22 licenses are for other type of accommodations. Some of these other types of accommodations, some properties have more than one dwelling unit, so these 22 licenses actually accounts for 33 units. Current regulations in the City of Nelson for tourist accommodation, you need to apply for what we call a general business license. There's an initial inspection, and then the license automatically renews. And now, so we'll have a look at the new regulations and the provincial regulations and how they will impact current license holders. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out before I dig a little bit more in the provincial regulations. Just wanted to clarify that in the City of Nelson, we use two terms. So we use the term short-term rentals and tourist accommodations, mainly because of the type of license that we issue, and it's based on zoning. But the short-term rental definition from the province covers both of these groups, so not just our residential short-term rentals. So that's why the new provincial regulations will also impact the tourist accommodation license holders. So one of the requirements will be as well the principal residence requirement. That will be new because we don't have that at the municipal level. The province has mentioned that they will exempt motels and hotels and hostels from that requirement. The municipal business license number that has to be posted online, that also will be new. Provincial registry and provincial registration number posted on the listing, that will be new as well. Same thing for the short-term rental definition, that will be adjusted to 90 days or less. And the other municipal requirements will still remain, such as inspection. So this is an evolving situation. The province has provided a framework, but there's still some additional details and specific regulations and guidelines to come. The requirements will be implemented throughout next year. For example, the principal residence requirement will be effective will be effective May 1st of 2024. And they also anticipate the provincial registry to be up and running late 2024. City staff will keep following provincial updates and stay in communication with license holders to inform them of any change that may affect their license. City staff will complete an in-depth review of the bylaws, policies, and make sure they get updated to align with the new provincial regulations. We'll keep monitoring listings and enforce municipal requirements. And as we navigate through these changes, we'll also be in communication with the province to provide feedback and ask for more clarification when needed.
Okay. I have Counselor Page, then Woodward, then Lockenberg.
So when we're looking at the tourist accommodation piece, if you've got a commercial unit with an apartment on top that's currently being rented out as tourist accommodation, that now will require someone to be it to be a principal resident or a long-term tenant, and they could possibly have tourist accommodations in a second unit in that building or in a bedroom.
That's one of the clarification we are waiting on. Yeah,
Okay.
that's our understanding, because so far the province, the only exemptions that the province has provided are for motels, hotels, and hostels. So, yeah, we need
So our
more.
best understanding currently is these will be brought into these regulations
Yeah.
and requirements. Okay.
And I think that's the, one of the clarifications, like what's the difference between, like if I have a commercial building with tourist accommodation, is that a hostel or a motel, a hotel, or is it residential? That's, I think that's where we need to determine what they are. Because I think some of them were built more commercial as opposed to residential. Clearly a apartment building that's residential, that's,
So through the chair, in your initial assessment, what will be the largest impact for Nelson itself, do you think? I mean, are we going to, because obviously the driver behind this is to get more rental units on the market. Do you think that's going to happen here with these new rules?
So for the short-term rental, like, or our short-term rental units, like I said, I don't think most of the requirements, we already have them in place, so I don't think there will be much change there. And I would say the most limiting factor for the city of Nelson are our quotas anyway, so we have that in place, and we have already, or we are pretty close to reaching our quotas, so that's going to be, I think, what is going to allow us to, keep that balance between the demand for short-term rental and the need for long-term housing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a tool we already have in place that is pretty effective at doing exactly that.
Okay, so supplemental, Mayor?
Yes.
So not a real dramatic effect in our town is what you're saying. It's maybe kind of a little bit around the edges, but it's not like a big shift. Because we already have quite a bit of regulation.
For these residential areas, yeah, I think in the commercial zones, maybe in the future that would allow, it will have a better impact, just because some of these buildings that are being built, maybe and intended to be used as residential units, these regulations will allow exactly that, to ensure that these units are built as residential units and are used for residential purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, another unknown is maybe, because currently the definition is 30 days, we're going to 90 days, so anyone that fits in between that, like they don't fall under our radar, so to speak. So if anyone couldn't fit our criteria, they might have decided, well, I'll just rent it for 31 days. But now they'll have to either bump that past 90 days or they'll fit into this new provincial reg. So that's a bit of an unknown there.
Okay, thank you.
So Lockenberg.
I'm interested in a few things, but one of them is the enforcement mechanisms here. It sounds like the province is talking about fines, and I was just trying to find in the legislation something like up to $50,000.
Yeah, they're quite a bit more than they're substantive, the fines now.
Right. Yeah, they're pretty aggressive, but it does fall on obviously municipal governments to enforce that. So that would be under the municipal ticketing system. Is that, I mean, we would essentially extend what we're doing today to accommodate this new legislation. And then just because I don't know this, how do we enforce it through MTI? if a fine is applied and it's pretty onerous and the homeowner decides not to pay, does it go on to title? Like, how does that work?
Where does the money go?
Yeah,
For the
that's.
I
another
think
good
ultimately you
question.
have to go to, you potentially go to court. Those substantial $50,000 fines, that's, I think, I think you've seen those in our fees and charges bylaws in the past, and you say, whoa, that's like $25,000 or $5,000 or something, but that's, I think, enforceable, through the courts. But the regular fines, I'm not sure if this is, do you guys know, are they
I don't think we've ever
requiring us
issued,
to?
like we never had to issue a fine. I think usually when they're, we always work towards compliance, and so we've never got to that stage. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't
think
have
I'm not sure if the legislation means we have to change our fines to accommodate or to be in line with the province, or how that mechanism, but that will be a question we have to figure out.
One of the things that's gonna happen is that the province is gonna set up a registry, so in fact, the work that we've been doing, we won't have to do as much, like when the provincial registry, so they actually have thrown out a bit of an olive branch, I guess, in terms of municipalities and how we might monitor this, because of the fact that they're going to be monitoring the fact that these platforms have to show these licensing numbers and whatever, and then they're gonna have a little branch of enforcement or whatever that's part of the package that finally rolls out in late 2024, I think. And so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I think that we have I think the bigger thing here is the number of places that we have, just like the one that's outside the door here. There's 2 suites above Superior Lighting. What are they now? I mean, the boys aren't living there. I mean, so, how does that work?
At least in one of them.
How does the stuff above, Broken Hill run and Cal Renwick's place? And so, I mean, those are I think there's those questions that they're not clear on. I don't think the province knows how to deal with those quite yet. So that's where we need to have more information back for sure.
Right. So then, just so I'm clear again, the enforcement of this, it's provincial regulation. Could there be municipalities that just decide not to enforce it and kind of ignore it? Is that
My sense
possible?
is these are provincial regulations and provincial fines.
You have to-
which-
They're provincial
and-
fines then.
And they have
Provincially licensed.
enforcement mechanisms in there, and as the mayor said, an enforcement branch. It doesn't sound like there's substantive. We will also have our own municipal fines that under our bylaw, I think those continue, that we would, do what we do now. As Valerie said, we have good compliance. We, we I think shut down a number of people that when they haven't actually got a license and those sorts of things. So, we'll clarify how those two things intersect, and I suspect we can have our own scheme, but the province can also fine you for under their legislation for not being in compliance.
Right, but to be clear then, Councillor Tate's kind of question about where the money goes in the case of the provincial enforcement mechanism.
I would
guess
suspect that goes to the province.
That goes
yeah.
to the province,
Yeah,
got it.
be a provincial fine, and any fines that we have under our own bylaws would be local.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Councillor Pinero.
I have a few things. Some of them are just anecdotes, but I met with Val last week and sort of got a sneak preview of this presentation. So, some of these units downtown. I mean, I was sort of, the reason I went was to sort of understand what exactly we are missing out on, I think, and maybe the difference between when I grew up in this town and currently, because we've never had more housing in our history and our population hasn't grown that much, and yet we're in a crisis. So what's different since 1997? And I would just like to point to, that's 143 potential homes for people that are not currently being used that way. And anecdotally, I used to live above commercial housing or commercial spaces downtown. Those are high frequency areas for people in the workforce, right? Living near where you work is great. So I believe that this is an actual thing. We're at a bit of a tipping point here. I know we do have a quota, and I'm just interested in knowing, I guess my question would be, do we know of any other municipalities that have taken, like there's the provincial regulations coming, but has there been other municipalities that have taken extra steps, that have recognized this as a threat to their residences and their neighborhoods, and have taken steps to like above and beyond to make sure that they continue to have functioning communities? And if there has been, I wonder if we know the results of that. And yeah, I mean, and another one, like I just was in Vancouver this weekend and stayed in an illegal Airbnb in the middle of downtown Richmond. There was signs everywhere that said no Airbnb. There was extensive signage detailing the amount of fines. It's $5,000 per day if you're caught giving your apartment over to Airbnb in this building. And yet there was 6 of us staying in 2 apartments, and I imagine we weren't the only ones, and it just continued and nobody looked twice at it. Like, I think the other point I would make is, like, we don't have a problem with enforcement and we don't have a problem collecting fines because everybody's in compliance, but what is our actual mechanism for finding people that aren't, like, we only really know about the people that are playing ball anyway. Like, if they have a license, then we know who they are. If they don't have a license, how do we even find them? And how many extra, beyond this 143 potential homes, and I'm just not counting the bedrooms, but like potential homes, how many more are there? And if you have an annual Airbnb license, it's sort of counterintuitive that you live there, like anyway, that's a lot, but if you have any trouble piecing out questions there, let me know.
Yeah, no worries. I can respond to the enforcement and monitoring piece. So the city has a I think pretty robust system in place. We use a third-party software. It basically crawls the web and the most common platforms such as Airbnb, VRBO, Flipkey, HomeAway. And it just identifies, every time there's a new listing, it will add it to our database. So that gives us the opportunity to identify the listing and check if they are in compliance, if they have a license, etc. So when we are notified that there is a new listing, then we can see, first of all, do they need a business license? Some of them, may not need a business license because they rent more than 30 days, for example. But if they fall under the short-term rental regulations, we contact the owner, and then we work towards compliance with them. At the time of this report, there were actually 8 non-compliant listings that were identified, and we had contacted all the owners, and we were working towards compliance with them. So I think the compliance rate was 94%, which I think is pretty good.
And
Speak to the principal residence. We require that it's your principal residence for taxation or property taxation purposes. So you can't say you can't have 2 principal residents. So the one that, if you want it short-term rental, it has to be you have applied for a homeowner grant and have certified to the provincial government that that's your principal residence. So that's the test we use. I guess somebody could have 2 principal residents and claim 1, but that would be fraud to the provincial government. So we thought that was a pretty good test to make sure that it is your principal resident.
And if I can add some clarification on the annual license, so it can seem counterintuitive where you say, well, they have an annual license, how can it be their principal residence if they're using it year-round? The annual license can be used, for example, if you have a home with a suite, so the home can be your principal residence and you can rent a suite year round. So there's still a principal resident on the premises. And then having an annual license doesn't necessarily mean that you rent the property year round, because some people just like the flexibility. So if you get a 4-month license, for example, it allows you to rent the space for 4 periods of 31 consecutive days in the year, so it's a little bit more restrictive than if you have an annual license. You could rent your space for a week in January, 2 weeks in April, 3 weeks in December. It offers more flexibility. So some people don't mind paying more for an annual license and get that added flexibility for rental.
Councilor Panero, follow up.
So could I also rent my house for 12 months a year under that annual license? Or is there a minimum, like, do I have to actually clear it out of people besides myself for any length of time at all?
So if there's only a house on the property and there is no other dwelling units, there's actually a cap on how many days you can rent your property.
There is.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it would not be your principal residence. So we have that in the bylaw.
And what is that cap?
I think it's half the year. It's
6 months.
Yeah, I can verify that for you, but it's.
And then I'll just throw in there just to finish off the conversation. So I own one of these 110 annual licenses because I have potentially a traditional bed and breakfast. So I'm not limited to how many days you can be that I can operate my bed and breakfast, because I live in it all the time, right? So what happened is that the bed and breakfast used to be actually a regulation within the city of Nelson that was separate. And when they went to the short-term rentals, they put traditional bed and breakfasts like ours into the mix. And then all of a sudden I fell within all these rules, which was fine because it's still my principal residence. And because I'm serving you breakfast every morning, I'm always there. So there are, I mean, within that 110 annual licenses, there's probably not a lot, but there's probably a handful of what I would consider traditional bed and breakfasts where the owners of the property are always in the home.
Yeah, and I believe that sort of, the few people that probably do fall, I know somebody else that falls into that category as well, and they actually live in the house that they rent out. And those people are not, like, if we were to try to recoup some of these places, those people are not really what we're talking about. However, just harking back to my recent experience, like, I didn't deal with the house owner or the apartment owner at all. We were renting 2 separate apartments in a building, and I dealt with a property manager. So this is very much a business, and it's very much in contravention of every single rule that we were just told about, I believe, and it speaks to reason that it's not an isolated situation and it doesn't only happen in Richmond. So I would put that out as like I guess a warning, so that sometimes the numbers, we can massage them to make it sort of, we can feel better about what's going on, but if the problem persists and it's not getting any better, we might look at the numbers as not being representative of what's actually going on, because I feel that that's sort of happening in other places.
Yeah, I think, as Valerie said, we have a pretty robust system. We monitor it ongoing. We do have software. I would say our program is probably more extensive than the provincial one that's coming out in many ways. And just hopefully that, I think the weight of the province is we can't require the Airbnb, the companies that run those platforms. We can't require them to provide this information. We've had to go out and get a third-party software. We can't require them to remove them from their listings, et cetera, et cetera. We can deal with the end product, but so that will be helpful that we now don't have to do that. So that will be a positive to us. But yeah, how many there is, that's definitely a policy decision by council. I would suggest our numbers are pretty representative because of the software we have. If you're listing on a normal platform, then we're going to catch you. If there's some underground stuff going on, then yeah, probably we're missing those ones. But I think we have some pretty solid numbers. But as you said, there's still 39 houses, apartments, and 51 suites. That's 90 units out there, and then there's the the tourist accommodation ones where the new residential property that built on Victoria is in that commercial zone, so they would technically be able to Airbnb every unit in that thing. That hasn't happened, but under the new regs they won't be able to do that.
Councillor Page.
Thanks. Just through the chair to Councillor Pinero, I just did also want to mention, keeping in mind that the density and the number of people within the units has been decreasing as the demographics have been shifting. We've been seeing those inside of our census numbers, that the number of people in each individual home is coming down. So that's creating additional utilization issues. My question, when we're looking at the fees that are associated with this, and we look at the recommendations from our housing consultant about the development of pre-development funds and the linkage when we look at the cannabis and the community safety component of originally having these principles of the activity that is causing the activity that has having an impact on our affordability, can we look at whether or not the fees that we're charging need to be increased to making contributions to our affordability fund in order to fuel pre-development funds to deal with purpose-built rentals that we need to create?
I think we'd have to look at that, but my understanding of business licensing, it's a cost recovery model in terms of what's the cost to enforce, cost to issue license, etc. I don't believe that we can do that through business licensing, but we'll check on it. I'm pretty certain we're supposed to cost recover. We have to. There is consultation with the business community and how we come up with that fees. And if you recall, on the cannabis side, we anticipated more policing costs, more enforcement costs. That's how we justified that. And in the end, we didn't see any of that. And I think there's a report coming maybe tonight that says we're going to reduce that fee because of the costs to enforcement just weren't where we had anticipated at the time.
Totally,
And
and I
Councillor-
appreciate that. I think the principle's the same. We just might have a different situation where there is actually an impact that's being linked back.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you can use business licensing
I heard you.
for
Yeah.
on
So-
the housing side of it.
But just, Councillor Page, I have asked that a total review of our business licensing be done, and there hasn't been space on anybody's workload since this council has come into being. And it was a question that I, as a councillor, asked the last council, and I'm hopeful that in 2024, that staff will have the space to look at a full review of business licensing. So then what we do with the revenue we make or don't make, is another discussion, but the ask in terms of looking across the city to make sure that we are issuing business licenses that are at the appropriate amount is something to do. So it will land on somebody's work plan, I'm sure, for 2024, and will be brought forward for council next year to do a full review. And that's why you see just cannabis, I believe, on later tonight's agenda. Anyhow, Councillor Payne.
I'm wondering if you could just answer your own question from the presentation. What happens when quota's at capacity? What I'm interested in is there a review process for this? So this number of licenses has been in place since this legislation was originally brought forward. Do we have any sort of formula when our population hits this, when our housing, our rental percentage is like
Vacancy
0.
rate.
So when we get our rental percentage that we have 3% available in town, like, do we have any thoughts around how we would monitor this so that we can make those adjustments that meet the needs of, the tourist industry? We haven't seen any new hotels lately, and we certainly want to support them while we're growing housing for the people that live here. So I'm just interested in the answer to your own question.
I mean, yeah, we obviously had some discussions around what happens if we do reach that quota. I think once we reach it, it'll be a first come, first served. But for the following year, we need to think about how we do it. We don't want these to put value in properties by whoever has had it in the past automatically has it. So, we were kind of playing around with the lottery system. And then if there is, but at the same time, we would have to ask council, like, is there appetite to change that number up or down? And then, we can do a bit of research on, what others are doing, what's best practice. So that would be a question we would bring at that time. But I think maybe with these new regs from the province, maybe if it decreases the number, maybe, I don't know, maybe we don't have to worry about it just yet, but, we're thinking about it and we'll come back to council. This will, a decision will need to be made at that point, how we deal with that.
Perfect, thank you.
And just kind of almost like a sidebar question. I mean, we're in the process now of we're putting out for business licenses shortly for the coming year. And it always seems to me that it's sometimes astounding that people miss that these changes have occurred. And do we just have a process when people are coming in to renew their license for 2024, considering that these aren't going to become truly regulations till the first round of them in May of 2024? Do we have a little cheat sheet or a heads up, or is it something that we are giving to people that are coming back in to get their business licenses for 2024 to let them know that changes are afoot? Or do we see that, I mean, the issue then becomes that, okay, these issues, this comes in mid-year, we've already done the licenses, now some of them are in violations of the provincial code. Are we giving people coming in a heads up that short-term rental regulations have changed provincially that may impact their business?
Yeah, it is our intention to communicate before the end of the year. So all the license holders that have been identified here that we have in our database will receive some communication. We want to make sure everyone is aware of the upcoming legislation. In terms of how we're going to issue the 2024 license, I think what we can do is issue a conditional license. So until these requirements are in effect, or until we have the clarification we need to really know how to, I'm thinking more about the commercial ones. I think we can issue a conditional business license. And then when we have further clarification, if there is an impact, then we'll let them know as soon as possible, and go.
So unfortunately, the provincial government has once again downloaded more work to the municipalities, unfortunately, at least in the short term here, so. But thank you for your work, and thank you for giving some thought to that, because these mid-year changes are always fraught, and then it's, suddenly they get a notice in, March, and they wonder why they didn't know beforehand, because sometimes we just go about doing what we do and haven't paid attention to the announcements or read the paper or tuned into the November 7th City Council meeting. So anyways, councilors, are there any further questions?
I do.
Sebastian has a
go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
No, after this, can I just present one of our new staff to council, but
Sure.
just.
Councillor Tate, you have another question.
Well, it's not so much a question, but I've done some digging, trying to find any kind of research that shows that once new regulations came in, that there was somehow a trend to more long-term rentals becoming available. And from my searching, there is no such research. So I don't know if it just hasn't been long enough for any of these like impacts to be seen, but I was curious if as this comes to the bylaw and stuff, if you guys happen to pull up anything that you find interesting. I know like Denver has had regulations for a long time, and Paris and New York have outlawed Airbnbs and that sort of stuff. But I don't know if there's actually any like studies about whether or not it actually releases some of that housing back to the population. And so if anything comes across your desk, if you could share it when you come back with those bylaw tweaks that we must implement, that'd be awesome. Please. Thanks.
Okay, back to you, Sebastian.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to take an opportunity to present one of our new planners, Tara Brown. Is in the back. Some of you might have met Tara. She's been working with us on a contract position for the OCB plan review, but now has moved into a permanent planner position to fill in because of that one position became vacant early fall. So I'm sure you'll get a chance to see Tara sitting in one of these seats very, very soon. But in the meantime, Tara will be around. So
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tara.
Welcome, Tara, and obviously the OCP group obviously inspired her to realize that Nelson would be a great place to stay. So, anyways, that's super. Okay, then thank you. If there's no further,
Well, I was just gonna, I was interested, sorry if I may, I was gonna speak to Councillor Tate's question about the research.
Yeah.
And I was interested too, and I had done a little bit of research and I just found it again. McGill University had done some studies on the impacts of short-term rentals and tracking the impacts in that way on the housing market.
Yes, but
And
not
so the assumption-
post-regulation.
Right. The assumption is that if you just reverse time, you'd draw back.
It's a bold assumption.
It's a super bold assumption.
that's a very bold assumption.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. And having said that, I think the one thing that we might draw a bit of hope from in terms of this policy move is that in terms of other sort of comparative market interventions like this, there does seem to be a correlation between sort of supply side initiatives and demand. So
Like, did the speculation tax work in Vancouver? Wasn't that one of them? Like, or the empty homes tax? Did that work? I'm curious.
That's an
I can't
question.
find anything about the post-regulation
yeah,
effects.
I think from what I was reading, one of the challenges in terms of looking at policy moves in isolation is that when you address, say, one part of it, like the speculative home tax, then there still might be other sort of the secondary options for those homeowners to take advantage of they're just sort of cascading down the options of most profitable. So the most profitable, second most profitable, third most profitable, and until you get all the way down, do you actually get the solution you're looking for? But in this case, it does seem that the research comparative looks positive, but you're right. I haven't been able to find anything direct, but in comparing other markets, it does seem like there's hope. at
Yeah,
least.
and I also found quite a bit of research correlating the impact of the increase in short-term rentals and the decrease in housing, correlating though, right? There's quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what the effect of speculation tax is, because of the fact that, one probably doesn't want that to be too successful, because then government wouldn't be collecting all that tax. So sometimes you have a plan in place, but it's hard to say what the outcome is that somebody might actually be looking for in a different way. So it would be interesting to see. We'll see. The province, I'm sure, will be required, or somebody will be hopefully looking at the numbers and answering that question, Councillor Tate. But I think we'll be looking at something in 2026 before we'll see the true effect, because this whole regulation scheme won't be in effect until late 2024. So.
That's their other legislation that they projected $130,000 new homes from the zoning, rights of zoning on residential lots. I don't know if there was any projections from this legislation.
No, they didn't have any projections, at least not when I sat with Seb through the technical briefing. There was no,
So, I mean, you know, the legislation can come in, but homeowners are gonna have to make choices for themselves. Like, doesn't necessarily translate, as you were saying, like reeling back time. It doesn't instantly develop new housing. So I'm really curious to see if the people who have these units or make that decision to like, okay, well, we're gonna go long-term, but that may not be the case for a lot of people. Because they like the flexibility of short-term and everything that offers, so I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Still gotta pay
I
the
think
mortgage.
some of the, things I saw in some of the producer write-ups were saying stuff like, like if you can Squamish the last year or so, like the Airbnbs increased by, I don't know, 20-some% in a year. So I think part of these rise was also maybe like hopefully this brings
Slow it
bring
down.
homes back, but slow down the, the purchase of homes for the purpose of short-term rental seemed to be like one of the priorities in my reading. So I think there's that component of it too, is to kind of slow that kind of that side of things down. So that might help.
I think the key here is that we were one of the first communities out of the gate, even before some of the resort municipalities who are probably the loudest, squeakiest wheels in terms of provincially, and I think our team in the planning department, did a great job of looking at something that sort of fits Nelson. We always sort of do a plan that is great for Nelson. There was a lot of people that were asking for our plan once we got it through council, and so I think once again we're out in front. And I think if we look here and we look at what was presented tonight, we've done a lot of this work already, and so I think we'll see and we'll hear back again about what future changes we have to make to the bylaw. But once again, I think that we are out in front of this, and so I think that we're doing quite well. And we probably will be able to somehow track whether or not it's changed anything. We'll figure out the way to do that too, probably. So, okay. So if there's no further questions, thank you, Seb, and thank you, Valerie. And welcome, Tara. And we will move on to City Manager. Do you have a report of any kind? Thank you.
Give a quick update. Mayor, I don't know if you want to speak to the Division of Family Practices and the proposal that's gone forward there.
You can go right ahead and comment on that.
Yeah, so the, I guess the Tri-Cities mayors and CAOs have been meeting with the Division of Family Practices. They have submitted a proposal to the province to create these primary health clinics throughout our region, the Lower Columbia, Fruitvale, and the Kootenay boundary as well. So there's looking at clinics in the boundary area, one in Midway, Fruitvale Trail, Castlegar and Nelson, to really look at a model where docs can get out of the business of running clinics and businesses and owning property and just be doctors, and there would be additional paraprofessional staff there, physios, occupational health, and all those type of nursing would all be part of that wraparound service for these clinics. So they've been working on this for a number of years, and as you know, we met with the minister at UBCM to promote this model, and that application has gone through. As with everything, with rising costs, the cost to do all those projects has risen. But when you look at it compared to building a new sewage treatment plant or something, it pales in comparison. So we certainly encouraged Andrew Earnshaw to ask for what they need, as opposed to trying to phase it over a number of years and create that uncertainty. So So that's gone forward. Chris and I did follow up with the Kootenai Art Therapy folks and gave them some ideas of other people to connect with. Selkirk College, Joy Barrett and Sydney Black on that cultural side. So I know she's connected with all those folks, and they were appreciative of that. Obviously, the budget meetings we've been having around the utilities, and what else has happened? Participated in the workshop that with the BC Housing, with the supportive housing piece of it. We have been meeting with Maglio's on their property and our lift station, and working with both our engineering staff and his engineering staff to look at how we advance that, advance, those, how do we solve the utilities on that property? And we did have a follow-up call with BC Housing on, what their plans are and who they're working with over, accommodating our homeless population over the winter. I think the mayor has maybe some further follow-up, but they are certainly working with Nelson Cares to increase available housing during the time, and they're quite confident that they can accommodate the folks that are currently in the North Shore Inn. We've also been having discussions around a fire hall location. Where certainly highlights that we are very land poor, and especially for central flat buildable sites. So we're working on that. I did have, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just a point of clarification on the fire hall.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, one of the new trucks that's in line, one of the fire trucks in line to get, won't actually fit in the old fire hall. Is that correct? I remember there was an issue around.
Yeah, I think we've got an extension on the existing
Yeah.
ladder truck.
I mean, the issues that, with needing to replace it is that fire underwriters, the insurance component, and our fire chief's been in contact with them, and if we have a council-approved plan in place to replace the fire hall, then they would be open to an extension on that, so that gives us a little bit more time, but.
Sorry, it was a ladder truck.
Yeah.
The new ladder truck.
Yes.
Is
and
much larger.
That is
than-
budgeted to come in 2026.
Right.
And then, I think it's 2027 that we're kind of at that, where it needs to be replaced, but if we can get an extension on that for a couple of years, that helps.
Okay.
But at some point, yes, those two issues
two
need to be resolved.
The new building and the new truck have
Yes.
to line up
Correct.
to fit in.
Yeah, so, I think if we have a plan in place to replace it, they're willing to extend the life of the current truck, because they realize we have no home for the replacement truck. So yes, that's
Thank you.
one of the drivers as well.
Thank you.
I did have a follow-up call with about the Nelson Health Campus, where that's at. So they're still looking at early 2025 for occupancy. They are still working on, how they're going to staff that without creating a shortage in other long-term care facilities in our community. This was new to me, but maybe the mayor knows, but they actually have a program where you can actually get a job with IH while you're still in school, and they will actually put you on the, not sure if they put you on the payroll, but they actually have a job for you and maybe help pay for your schooling, etc. So clearly there's, they're being quite aggressive. We at Economic Development, if Keith remembers, that we suggested that we work on a pilot with them, obviously retraining people in our own community, lessons the the challenge of finding housing for people coming in to fill those jobs. So, so that's kind of fell off the radar, but I got it back on the radar. They weren't even aware of folks like KCDS and their programs. So we're trying to connect those dots so that, that they're, know what resources are in our community, that they're not in their own bubble out there doing these things on their own. They certainly have worked with Selkirk in terms of some of their needs. As everyone's aware, the roof on the Civic has been a topic of discussion of how we manage that through this winter. So that's on the will be on the agenda on the budget meeting we have on Thursday.
Yes, Councillor Woodward.
A question on that. Maybe that'll actually be for GM.
Yep.
So managing the snow load, how do you sort of envision, so we get a big snow comes in, roof builds up, that overload happens, and we work with our plan. But how that snow melts or how that overload is reduced, I mean, that is such an open-ended question, right? Because it totally depends on weather or further snow, so it's going to have to be almost like a day-by-day management situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's accurate, and we'll go into greater depth on Thursday during the meeting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it will be very dynamic in how that's managed, entirely dependent on the precipitation. And as we were reminded just about a half hour ago, 40 minutes ago, the precipitation is very difficult to forecast. So,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a very dynamic situation.
Okay.
Is the best way to put that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the only other one is a number of our staff participated in the law seminar, that all-day event on Friday put on by Lidstone, which covered all aspects of local government, some of the up-to-date cases, etc., including council code of conduct, and we will. Sarah's scheduling, maybe if that's gone out already, schedule a workshop with council to see where council wants to go on that one. So it was a good session. Many of our staff, had development services staff, come to that part that was around land use, and others more around the corporate services side, etc. So that was good. That's it.
Okay, councillors. Oh, Councillor Payne, you have a question for the CAO.
I do. When I was reviewing the minutes from the September business meeting, you did give an update on the strategic plan, that staff was still working on it. Is there anything further to report on that?
Yes, so I have had a chance to look at it. Sarah, Chris and I will get together and hopefully in this next week and get that finalized, because we need to get it out to you, so yes.
That'd be great, thanks.
Councillor reports. Anybody have a report that they would like to give or say, or any bit of anything? Councillor Lockenberg?
I don't have a report, but I did have just a question for the CAO about his report. In terms of the food cycler rollout, are we getting a good sense of the early data in terms of response back?
We're gonna have some of that. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
good question to ask, but we're gonna have on Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
We're gonna have a much more fulsome report on that. If you can write that question down and make sure you ask it on Thursday, if you don't feel that in that presentation that that you're getting what you want to know. But
Yeah, I was just curious
Yeah.
in the moment, because I
No,
seen
I-
some things come in that looked really positive, but I
Yeah,
didn't want to be
no, I think
overly optimistic.
overall it's been positive. I did ask Carmen to make sure she addressed where we're at with it, what kind of feedback we're getting, what the early results are, how much material's been dropped off at the bins we have. And, one of the things that she said to me was, this truly is a pilot, right? How do we design these drop-off bins? And, one of the, this is the first time we're dealing with basically every resident on a one-to-one basis almost. So the learning that we'll have is, this isn't the only change that we're asking our residents to do. So the insight of, what motivates people to change, what gets in their way, all those sorts of things. So, that in itself is actually super interesting information and data that team is getting that you couldn't get elsewhere. So it's super interesting that way as well.
Councillor Payne.
I did have the opportunity this week last week, I guess, to attend the short event at Nelson Museum and Archives to say goodbye to the current executive director, Astrid Heyerdahl, who has been there since it was Touchstones. She was just a stellar candidate to come to Nelson, and through her work and the incredible collaboration she built with her board and the team at that organization, I believe she has moved our community forward pretty dramatically around not only truth and reconciliation, but so much about the understanding of who we were. When you think of the mountain biking show, I'm sure everyone got to see that, the cannabis show, just really deepened, for me at least, the understanding of who we are, what our culture is, but the connections and the relationships she's built with the Indigenous communities in our area are just beyond value. So I just want to recognize her contribution while she was here. Sorry that she's leaving, but she has left the museum in good hands, in my understanding, and I'm sure we'll have a presentation from them to meet the new executive director shortly. That was very exciting and sort of sad to see Astrid go. She used to mountain bike by my house when I was out in the garden, and we would have a little chat. I did attend the cybersecurity event put on by FCM, one of the most frightening hours of my life, but I sort of got over it. I sort of tried to be keeping my head down around that, and I was annoyed by two-factor authentication, but I'm now totally solid with that. Bring it on, I'm good. And we have work to do, and we know we're on that path, so knowing that is the first step in the right direction, and I know we're more than the first step, we're heading down that path. The last thing I'm going to talk about is last night at the library, one of the other stellar organizations in our community. It's Climate Change Week at the libraries across British Columbia, maybe Canada, I'm not sure, but Laura Sachs from the Climate Hub with Annie Holtby, the chair of the library board, did a presentation on this simulation software called En-ROADS, where you can take, and it's available to anyone, you can sit down and look at so many of the different factors around climate change and actually move these dials back and forth to see what are the cumulative effects that we need to take. What are those steps that we need to take to move forward? And it just shows in sort of real time what that's going to do for the global temperature rise. If you have a chance, I'll see if we can get it put in the meeting notes so that you can take a look at it. I do have some materials that they gave out around that. The En-ROADS control panel, Climate Interactive, and there are many things where you can just adjust those dials. And it was pretty, Councillor Woodward was there as well as Cecilia Jacques from our climate team. Fascinating information, and it really just brought up a lot of those conversations that made it easier for people to understand. It's not all of one thing or all of another thing. We're not going to take away this or lose that. It's just minor adjustments. There's a lot of dials, and we need to make that. So that was fascinating. Again, just an example of some of the stellar programming that our little old library here in Nelson offers to us. So take advantage of some of those things. Those are some of the key things. Lots of other events that I was out at with my fellow councillors and other staff members, but moving along.
Anyone else? Okay. I have a few things just to mention. So I had the honor of receiving the first copy of the Remembrance Day sort of time frame from the president of the the Legion last week. It was nice to see him, and they're planning, of course, service at the Cenotaph here on Saturday for all those that want to join in. And just a reminder that tomorrow is Remembrance Day for Indigenous veterans of Canada. I also was fortunate enough to give some opening remarks to the Water Supply Association of BC. They had their AGM here. They come every few years in the rotation to come here, and they all said that they enjoy coming to Nelson. So that's great to have them coming and using our services here, our conference center. We, of course, had the waste and wastewater budget meeting, and again, based on good management, we're going forward with conservative increases in both those services. Those bylaws will be coming forward in the next while. The CAO mentioned that we had a regional primary care meeting where we did the last review of the submission that Andrew Earnshaw has put forward to the government. Now we keep our fingers crossed and hope that we get the seed money that we need to continue to go forward on that. All of us had an invitation to join the police board for lunch last week. And that was just a nice casual, there was no agenda. It was just the fact that the city does fund the police board, but they are arm's length from city council, so it's good to know who the members of the police board are. I've already looked at next year's schedule, and we've looked at scheduling another lunch for, again, next year, late in the year, but perhaps in the meantime, city council can invite the police board if they like, maybe mid-year, so that we can have a couple of these opportunities to get together and meet. And I'm hopeful that by the beginning of the year, we will have a couple more police board members. We are short right now, and we have actually requested that we go to the full complement of police board members. We've always run with 5, and we have asked to go to 7, and currently we only have 4, so need to do that. One of the other great things I got to attend last week was an employer recognition event. It was October was Community Living Month, and also Disability Employment Awareness Month, and the City of Nelson had been nominated by Nelson Cares, and just to, I'm just going to read here. You've enhanced the quality of life of many people by providing them with employment opportunities. And so I was invited to come to a dinner and celebration, and it was great. And I had no idea how many people, neurodiverse people, we actually do employ here in the city. It was super to go. The police chief joined me. They have someone that works with the police department who nominated the Nelson Police. The Nelson Library Board was also nominated and received an award. And this is the first time that they've gotten together since before COVID. So it was a really exciting evening, and I have to say it was really heartwarming to be there. That's one of the fun things you get to do as mayor, is to go, and Maddie will be framing our certificate, and we'll have it out front there shortly. Also did the swearing in for a new exempt officer, Melanie Bolak. So you'll be seeing her out and about. This is going to be a great addition to our force, besides being bilingual, which is very nice. She has done a lot of work in a lot of different areas. A lot in the military reserve and policing. She's just come back from the Democratic Republic of Congo. She's done time in Haiti, so she's had a very diverse background. And before coming here to Nelson, her partner works for the RCMP here in town. So hopefully they'll be here in our community for some time. And the other exciting thing is maybe I'll finally get to learn how to ride my motorcycle, because I just never quite finished getting all the testing done. She is a motorcycle instructor, and it's also going to give us the opportunity to get the Harley, which has been actually, the police department does have a motorcycle, and it's been in storage, I think, since my cousin, who was a police officer that actually rode it, has retired from the force. So it's going to be good to see that out again in the summer. It's just a different way to get around town than in a police vehicle. Counselor Page.
So are you prepared at this meeting to commit to riding that motorcycle in next year's Pride Parade?
Well, I don't know that I can learn how to ride that great big Harley, but
think that is
maybe
a
I could
yes.
take the little motorcycle I have. So I'm sticking with the electric truck
Could probably
for
hide
next year's
some-
parade.
Some training wheels on the side, and we're all like,
Yeah, that's what I probably need. Or maybe I'll just ride behind her and she can drive the motorcycle.
sure.
Anyhow, so that was great to do that swearing in. So we're really getting some great new young people that are interested in being in Nelson and being part of the police force here. So, and then a few of us were in attendance at the Chamber of Commerce gala on Saturday night, and I think that the Chamber did a good job of putting that on, and I think they've raised a good amount of money for the work that they are doing, and they will be actually donating to some not city causes, but community causes with some of the money that they raised at that event on Saturday night. So, and then met Councillor Payne and I, along with city staff, met with the Share group who built the housing development that's down at the foot of Baker Street. They are ready now that they've got that experience underneath their belt. They're ready and looking for another project to take on. So we are working with that group in whatever way we can to help with them do another workforce housing unit in town. So it's been busy. And it's going to be, we're in the Christmas season and just seems that there's going to be even more stuff to do. But if nobody has any questions of my report, and nobody else has a report, we will ask for recess for dinner, please. Moved by Councillor Lockenberg, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor of recess and opposed, and that carries. We'll see everybody back at 7 o'clock.
You like more beef? More beef.
We're good? Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. If I could have a motion to reconvene the meeting. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Okay, Council, we are at item number 10. And item number 10 is a request for a letter in support of the Hemodialysis Treatment Center to be at Kootenai Lake Hospital. So members of the community have requested that the city send a letter to the West Kootenai Boundary Regional Hospital District Board advocating for the creation of a dialysis service in Nelson. Council is now requested to consider the request. Wow, okay. So anyways, there's a little bit of a housekeeping error here in the recommendation, so I'm actually just gonna ask the corporate officer to read out the resolution, and then I'll ask someone to move it and second it.
That the City of Nelson send a letter to the West Kootenai Boundary Regional Hospital District Board with copies to Interior Health Authority and Ministry of Health explaining the need for dialysis service in Nelson and advocating for the creation of such a service.
Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Any discussion, councillors? Seeing none, all those in the,
We're gonna amend that. I think.
yeah,
It's amended.
as amended, yeah. I mean,
It was amended.
it was amended.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the motion.
All those in favor of the motion as read? And opposed, and that carries. Thank you very much. And that was unanimous for anybody that was wondering. Item number 11, delegations. We have none this evening. 12, bylaws. And if I flip over the page here, we have a number of bylaws that are in process of reading and some for final reading. Our first one is a rezoning application for 403 Vernon Street. And the applicant Summon Psychology Group has applied for bylaw amendments to rezone the property at 403 Vernon Street to a C1 core commercial zone, which would allow health services as a permitted use on the premises. The proponent is seeking the following amendments. Zoning bylaw number 3199/2013 from institutional I1 to core commercial C1. The official community plan OCP bylaw number 3247/2013 from institutional to mixed use core. Accordingly, staff have prepared zoning amendment bylaw number 3583/2023 and official community plan amendments bylaw number 3584/2023. Council is now asked to pass the first two readings of each amending bylaw. And for those of you who don't know where this building is, if you didn't get a chance, it is the building that's just outside here on the corner, the lovely brick building. So, and I see Valerie's back with us to answer any questions that we might have. So there was quite an extensive amount of information attached. Does somebody like to put the
Second.
first recommendation? Okay, moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward.
So are we just doing one and then two
Yeah.
and then three? Okay, so one, that that the zoning amendment bylaw number 3583/2023 be introduced and read for first and second time by title only.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns, council?
Just for the benefit of the public, could we get a quick description of it from staff?
Sure. Valerie, if you'd like to.
Yeah, this is a rezoning application for 403 Vernon Street, the building, like Mayor said, behind the courthouse. This building or this property was purchased earlier this year by Summit Psychology Group, and they have the intention of moving their practice into that building, their existing practice into that building. Currently, the property is zoned as institutional, and it doesn't allow for health services, which is the services that they provide. So rezoning the property to a C1 commercial zone would allow that health services use on the property. Our review showed that this proposal aligns with the OCP policies, and the new zone would align or be consistent with all the properties downtown. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions or concerns, Council? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the recommendation? And that carries. Thank you. Recommendation number 2. Is there a mover? Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward.
So number 2, that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 3584/2023 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only.
Any concerns or discussions regarding that, Council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Recommendation number 3.
Moved.
Moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page.
We're an effective duo. That the zoning amendment bylaw number 3583 and the official community plan amendment bylaw number 3584 not be brought back to council for adoption until the applicant has finalized the heritage covenant to be registered on title of 403 Vernon Street to the satisfaction of staff and council has approved the updated statement of significance.
Any discussion or, Councillor? Sorry, I'm just looking at a housekeeping issue, but then. Okay, so they don't follow in number order.
No, they don't. Their number is not connected to the parent bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Sorry, just want to make sure that we made an error the other day on a number on a bylaw, and I'm just looking at the numbers on the bylaw and thinking that they don't match up, sorry.
May I have an explanation around amount around the heritage element of this building? Because it is pretty significant, right? There a lot of work was done on it, and it's a
Yeah, so the building
it's a new building.
is already recognized as a heritage asset. It has a statement of significance, and it's in the Nelson Register, which offers it's more of a recommendation to, maintain the heritage features. It doesn't give the city a lot of say, in the maintenance of these heritage features. So that's why the Heritage Covenant is a legal tool for us to offer that added level of protection.
Right. And just in addition to that, that building, just for the public, that building was completely
Repointed.
yes, and then it was also they had it wrapped in plastic for a long time because they were taking out, was it asbestos?
Yeah, no, I think that was the
That was for the
repointing.
repointing.
That was
they
the
were doing.
repointing,
But
okay.
they did, I believe, have to deal with methane on that
Right.
building as well.
So it's really been refurbished. Great.
Yeah, at least the outside of the building
Yes.
is. I'm not sure what they've done on the inside.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that carries. And number 4, Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. And Councillor Page.
That staff be directed to schedule a public hearing.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Up next is 12B, the Hydro Service Bylaw Rural Rates. And so on September the 25th, 2023, and October the 20th, 2023, Nelson Hydro presented to council with regards to its 2024 budget and the corresponding need for annual general rate increases from the rural service area. Council provided staff with direction to move forward with implementing a 6.2% annual general rate increase for rural services. Hydro Service Bylaw Rural Rates Amendment Number 3586, 2023 is now presented to council for first 3 readings.
I'll move one.
Okay, and is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward?
Sure. That the Corporation of the City of Nelson's Hydro Services Bylaw Rural Rates Amendment Number 3586, 2023 be read a first and second time by title only.
Thank you. So that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? We have the general manager from Nelson Hydro present. If anybody had any questions that have occurred since we had the first 2 robust presentations from Nelson Hydro?
I'll just say that, we had a very, very in-depth workshop on all of this, and just, maybe, do you want to talk about it, Scott, a little bit about, just for the general public who weren't here at the workshop?
I can summarize briefly. Absolutely. On the 20th of October, Nelson Hydro staff presented to council in a 4-hour, in detailed budget that went over the plans that Nelson Hydro has for 2024 that form the basis upon which the rate increases presented. We outlined the efforts to which we have gone to try and keep that rate as low and as reasonable as possible, but that the 6.2% is necessary in order for us to be able to maintain and sustain the utility. Since that time, there have been no developments, direction from the BCUC or any other inputs in the budget that have changed or would warrant an alteration of that 6.2% rate increase.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Payne has a question.
I don't have a question. There's just one thing I wanted to add to that, is that it is remarkable that you were able to keep the rate at the 5.2 in light of the fact that Fortis's rate increased above that rate. So instead of just following along with them, your team was able to come together and make some other changes that still maintained the excellent utility that we have, and was a little easier to swallow with the rate increase. So thank you very much for all of that work. And I can't remember what the Fortis increase was again.
Fortis will be increasing the rates at 6.4%.
Yep.
effective January 1st, 2024.
Yeah, so it helps, every little bit helps.
The only piece that's really critical on this is we have applied for some deferral accounts that allow us to, in the event weather events affect us like they did in 2023, where those are outside of our control, that we have a mechanism to recover that one way or the other. They may work in our, to customers' favors, and they will get the benefit of that, and they may work in, if we have weather that goes against us, then we just need to be able to recover that over future years, consistent with other electric utilities.
Okay, recommendation number 1 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Recommendation number 2.
I'll move.
Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Payne. Councillor Wood.
Sure. Number 2, that the corporation of the City of Nelson's Hydro Services Bylaw Rural Rates Amendment Number 3586 to 2023 be read a third time by title only.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you, Council, on that. Moving on to 12C, we have the urban rates. So on September the 25th, 2023 and October 20th, 2023, Nelson Hydro presented to Council with regards to its 2024 budget and the corresponding need for annual general rate increases from the urban service area. That's the City of Nelson. Council provides staff with direction to move forward with implementing a 5.2% annual general rate increase for the urban service area. Hydro Service Bylaw Urban Rates Amendment Number 3587, 2023 is now presented to Council for first 3 readings. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Lockenberg. Councillor Payne.
That Council pass the following resolutions. Number 1, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Hydro Services Bylaw Urban Rates Amendment Number 3587, 2023 be read a first and second time by title only.
Council, any questions? Councillor Lockenberg.
I'll just point out that this, in our staff background here, that the 5.2% rate increase is largely attributable to the 6.7% general rate increase sought by Fortis BC.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments, councillors? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Recommendation number 2. Moved by Councillor Lockenberg, seconded by Councillor Woodward.
Corporation of the City of Nelson Hydro Services Bylaw Urban Rates Amendment Number 3587, 2023 be read a third time by title only.
It's been moved and seconded. Councillors, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you for that. Thank you, Scott, for being here. I think that takes care of the...
He's got one more thing.
If I could just
Sure.
mention and remind council that
Oh,
Nelson
the
Hydro
upcoming
is hosting an open house on November 23rd at 3:30 to 5:30 at the Nelson Innovation Center. And if anyone, especially the public and customers, have any questions about the Nelson Hydro rate increase or the budget or the operations, I'll have my staff there to answer questions and discuss any concerns that there may have.
Generally, there are snacks.
And there will be snacks.
Snacks are good. Thank you, General Manager.
Not perfect.
Thank you.
Nelson Hydro perfect.
We should do that. That's a good lean in.
Okay, moving on to 12D, Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw Number 3588 regarding the cannabis business licensing fee. In 2022, the City of Nelson received a request from cannabis retailers to reduce the business license fee for retail recreational cannabis. The current fee for recreational cannabis retail is $2,500 per year. Staff are of the opinion that it is reasonable to amend the cannabis retail business license fee to match retail wine and beer. This would mean a reduction from $2,500 to $210. Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw Number 3588, 2023 is now presented for the first 3 readings. There's an extensive background there. Councillors, I'm sure you all read.
Move.
And moved by Counselor Woodward and seconded by Counselor Lockenberg. Counselor Woodward.
Number one, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3588 be introduced and read first and second time by title only.
Counselors, any concern or comment? Counselor Tate.
I do have a question. I see that we are looking at amending this license, and it was kind of initiated by a request. Is there any consideration of looking at all of them?
So this
When-
was, I commented on this earlier this
Yeah.
evening, that I have asked staff to try to fit into the 2024 work plan, that we would have a complete review of all business licenses for the City of Nelson. I had asked that earlier this year, but there just was no room on the work plan, and hopefully there will be going forward, and maybe we'll have discussions even in budgeting about whether or not we actually use a summer student, or we look at some other options of coming in to do any kind of background research that might be needed as we look at a complete review of our business licensing process here in town. Councillor Payne.
So if I understand this correctly, this bylaw is from 2008, the current fees and charges, or have they been updated in the meantime? I
No,
tried to.
this was the price that, it wasn't 2008. We didn't, we passed this when I was on council in 2014, 15.
I think we've had some.
Updated in the interim? I
Well, I
couldn't
think
find
they
that on the
just have
website.
been sort of inflationary
Okay.
increases to reflect
Perfect.
higher staffing costs, et cetera. We have not looked at, whether the rates for individual businesses are. We've tweaked it here and there where we know we've been out of line, so it definitely has a review. I don't believe it's on development services work plan for 2024, so council would have to look at how you could create capacity, obviously with the OCP, et cetera. There's a fair amount on their work plan, but we can certainly talk about it.
So fingers crossed. Hope is eternal, or whatever the saying is. Any further comments on resolution number 1? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Recommendation, resolution number 2. Moved by Councillor Woodward. Seconded by Councillor Lockenberg. All those in favor?
read it?
Oh, read it, sorry.
Yep. So 2, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3588 be read a third time by title only.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, council. 12E, the Consolidated Reserve Fund Bylaw number 3581. In March 2023, the City of Nelson received $4.2 million from the province of BC from the One-Time Growing Communities Fund, GCF. As a condition of this fund, the grant must be placed in a segregated reserve established by bylaw before December 31st, 2023, for the capital and planning purposes of the GCF. During this process, staff are using this opportunity to perform some housekeeping of current reserve bylaws to provide efficient administration and management of these reserve funds. Staff are proposing to repeal individual reserve fund bylaws and to replace them with one consolidated reserve fund bylaw. In addition, there are also a few funds commonly referred to as reserves that have not been formally established as such. Council is now asking to adopt the bylaw.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Tate. And Councillor Payne, Page.
That the Consolidated Reserve Fund Bylaw number 3581, 2023 be finally adopted. And I have a comment.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Is there any concerns or comments from council? Councillor Page is the mover.
I just really want to highlight the good work of staff here over the course of the last term. All of these different funds and the places they've lived, this really brings them under one home that I think provides additional clarity and consistency across the organization and to the public. So I think this is actually really wonderful bit of housekeeping to just make things clearer across the board when it comes to these funds.
Thank you, Councillor Page. I think we all agree about that. Councillor Payne, I saw your hand up.
I'm just going to clarify, my assumption is that any interest earned in these is allocated back to those particular funds based on their amount. Okay, figured just checking.
Any further questions or concerns? This has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay, and then 12F. Building Amendment Bylaw Number 3580, 2023. At Council's October 10th, 2023 regular meeting, staff presented a report to Council proposing that the building bylaw be amended to adopt higher energy efficiency and lower carbon emissions requirements for Part 9 complex buildings, applicable occupancies noted below, and Part 3 buildings. Building Amendment Bylaw Number 3580, 2023 is now presented for adoption. Moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Tate. And if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Payne.
That the Corporation of the City of Nelson that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Building Amendment Bylaw Number 3580 be finally adopted.
Okay, any comments or concerns, councillors? I think we had a pretty good session on these changes going forward. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. Wow. Excellent. On to number 13, recommendations from staff. Active Transportation Grant Application. City staff are seeking council approval for the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant to upgrade the waterfront Trans-Canada Trail multi-use path along the 900 block of Lakeside Drive. The grant intake closed on October the 27th, 2023. A council resolution endorsing the grant application is required by December 1st, 2023 in order to satisfy the application requirements. There's lots of background there. And I'm looking for a recommendation.
Move.
Moved by Councillor Page, he beat you to it. Seconded by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page.
The council approved the 2023-2024 BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant application to implement a new waterfront Trans-Canada Trail multi-use path to improve walking, biking, and rolling infrastructure along the 900 block of Lakeside Drive, and further that the proposed projects are shovel-ready as set out in the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant application criteria. And finally, that the council commits to funding its share of the project in the amount of $283,126.
And so that's been moved and seconded. Is there any comments, questions? We have staff here. We have Natalie here. If anybody has any questions or concerns, we had a pretty comprehensive background to attach, but she is here to answer any questions.
So
Councillor Woodward and then Councillor Payne.
Thank you, through the chair. So obviously this is like a section of the entire waterfront walkway. So it kind of feels like, you know, we've got the sort of bridge to the parking lot, the big mall parking lot, pretty great. And then after the parking lot, there's this, and then on to the dog walk area, and it's pretty great. So we have that section of the parking lot area. Is this kind of thing possible in that parking lot area? Now, I did inquire, and of course, that's a privately owned parking lot. Is there any room to improve that area for the city to match up with what we're doing here?
Yes, it's in our official community plan that we will try and obtain a pathway along the waterfront, a continuous pathway. And I think they were talking about the mall when they put that in. If the mall goes to develop, right now we have the ability to negotiate that waterfront pathway through rezoning, and we can also ask for it through subdivision. So those are our current mechanisms that we could use, and it's in our OCP, so we would absolutely ask for it. Otherwise, if development stays as is, they would have to do that of their own volition to want to put that investment. But I can't remember if we have an agreement right now for public access over those lands. Do you know, Kevin?
My understanding is that it's just the right of way for the tram that we have.
Okay.
That's it.
Public access, I don't believe we have a public access agreement for the pathway that goes through there, other than it's a business that wants people to come to their business, so I'm sure they're supportive of that. There are new owners, so I think it would be good to start a discussion with them, and, certainly improving that would be, I think would benefit the mall as well, even as is. And, there might be a way to create an agreement where we would be able to access grants as a municipality if we entered into some type of instrument that gave us sort of access to that. So that probably would allow us to access grants that they wouldn't be able to do as a private landowner. So I think there might be a win-win there, but definitely, I think this is obviously this project is because of the development that's happening on this block of Lakeside Drive, and anytime those things happen, we always look for opportunities to improve that other amenity spaces, infrastructure, and there are some opportunities even when development doesn't happen, but we probably would have to come to the table with trying to assist in that public space that we'd be trying to create there. It would be more than just servicing their property. It would be creating that pathway.
I just think, like we like the paving of the walkway past the soccer fields, really opened up a lot of accessibility for people using different modes of transportation. And so there's this, after this is completed, then there's this kind of last section that I hope at some point we could bring it all together.
So just so you know, Councilor Woodward, I was trying to have a call today with the property owners there, and we never got to touch base today. So this isn't lost on me nor any of you as fellow councilors about the fact that that would be great. And I guess I'm fully in favor of this, but I'm also wondering if we are having any conversation at some point. It doesn't make any difference to us passing this motion today with the developer across the street from this section of land, Kulos Developments, in terms of if they are, what they're planning and whether or not they're looking to potentially make a contribution to the beautification outside their property.
I can add to that. We have had those conversations. So as part of this project, and I think, this project is building off the work that's happening down there. So obviously we closed Lakeside Drive. I know that was challenging for the community for a little bit, but the developer has done one coat of asphalt, and next year they're going to repave the entire road. So it's an opportune time for us to also do work in that area. The developer has also agreed that the current sidewalk location doesn't work for this multi-use path, so they've agreed to remove the existing sidewalk, push it back to their property line. That gives us about an extra 3 meters. And, they do have plans to put a marina in place. So the amenities in front of the marina, it's my understanding, we haven't gotten anything in writing, that the developer would pay for all of those amenities. So that's kind of what's on the table now. We have to continue working with him to finalize that.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Tate.
Thank you for this. The renderings look like this multi-use pathway still crosses the train tracks twice. Is there anything that you can shed some light on whether or not there's a possibility of not crossing the train tracks at all and swapping those locations?
We did explore that. The Tram Society got that grant, and we looked at if it was going to be possible to switch them, but it was too tight of a timeline for us to be able to move them, and because it was like around $100,000 mobilization fee for the people who went and did the work for the Tram Society, so they can't come back very quickly. Plus, I think there was a lot of unknowns in terms of costs with moving the tram tracks because we'd have to move the poles. Overall, we struggled with it too, because I think that would be really beautiful. But in the end, it is going to be one flush, even surface. So most of the time the train goes by, it's only in that section for a really short time. And the rest of the waterfront pathway could be walked on or used when the tram's not there. So we did consider it. I think it was a timing and cost thing.
Councillor Payne, I saw your hand up.
I was just hoping we were going to be able to see this bigger, but I can look at it another time because I wasn't totally clear on some of the things. So there's a bike path, there's a walking path, there's a tram track, and then the road is on the other side. The sidewalk on the, I guess that would be the south side, is going to come away, so the road will actually look like it's moved over. But the lanes on the road will be narrower, which you feel is a traffic calming method.
Correct.
Even though the bike lane will be separated from the road, as this looks to me here. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So we're reducing the lane widths in line with best practice, and we had lots of discussions internally about that. The intent of that is to slow traffic down. I was counting traffic in that area, and I did see how fast people drive there. So the intention is to narrow the lane widths and reclaim some of the right-of-way, because right now we don't have a lot of right-of-way on the water side. And so it goes the narrow road, or the sidewalk for the developer, the narrower road, and then the multi-use pathway, a 3.6 meter wide multi-use pathway plus a 0.6 or 0.8 buffer between the pathway and the road, and then the tram tracks.
Okay, so the area that the tram tracks is in, that's not for pedestrians. That's just completely separate. That's what
It is completely separate, but
that's what I wasn't totally understanding. So multi-use, so bikes and pedestrians will be on that 3.6 meter, I
Yep.
think you said? Okay, that'll be interesting to see how that is observed by the.
It'll be similar, but this will be similar to how the rest of our waterfront pathway operates right now. So it's a shared pathway, but this will be wider than the lakeside path that we just paved, for context. I think the lakeside path is about 3 meters. Yeah.
So have we reached out to the regional district on this, because they support the Trans-Canada Trail and across the region? So I think this is a parks contribution potential.
No, we have not reached out to the regional district, but we have been talking to the Trans-Canada Trail
Yep.
about their funding. So,
Yeah.
okay. No, we can definitely do that, though.
Councillor Payne, for the
Just
second time.
one last thing, when you say, so you've sort of drawn a little dock that will go out to the, or a little walkway that will go out to the, that's approximately where it's going to be, or exactly where it's going to be?
It's
We don't
really,
know?
yeah.
Okay, and when you talk about the amenity area, so that'll just be sort of more seating, and again, it'll be another crosswalk over the tram? Okay.
Exactly. It'll be seating. The developer has had conversations with the Tram Society, so they've talked about making that a formal tram stop.
Okay.
So those amenities would be put in by the developer at that location. Yeah.
Okay, the one thing I didn't notice, and I know these are preliminary, but I didn't notice bike parking along it. Is there room anywhere to stop and park the bike and sit and walk, do whatever? Or is it sort of get on at one end and go?
No, there will be some amenities where people can stop. There's two kind of, points on here. One closer to the mall entrance where you can stop and park your bike. It hasn't got to the level of design exactly where a bike rack would go. And then there would be another amenity area at the beginning of the entrance to the future marina, where people could stop and hang up their bikes or rest their bikes.
Okay.
It was bike parking.
Councillor Tate?
Through the chair, I know this is just a rendering,
Yeah.
but I am picturing the dozens of bikes and e-bikes that go from uphill to the soccer field in the spring. And to me, this is just reusing the space as it already is, and that's not a way that people would go, right? Because if you were to come down Hall, you're not going to go all the way behind the Prestige to get on the multi-use path. And if you come down Hall and turn right on Lakeside, now it's going to be a narrower street that turns into a parking lot. So I guess I'm curious about like the actual bike way that you would ride, that you see, that I know of dozens of young people that go from basically Trafalgar to the soccer fields in the spring. And so, and I don't know which route they're taking, but I mean, we've all seen them ripping along the highway and coming, like there's lots of different ways to get there. And I'm curious if we can find the best way and funnel the traffic, that bike traffic in particular that way. And maybe this is more Councillor Lochtenberg's speciality, and it's definitely something that I know that you're working on with Planner Kuziak, but as this is, I'm not seeing it being an improvement for that particular bike traffic, and I'm not sure if there's a way to incorporate an improvement as something to have, because that's dozens, I think.
Yep. No, it's a good point. I mean, so the narrow block will only be that one block. The 900 block leading up to it will be just as wide. So technically they could get on the path. The other thing to consider too, if this is going to be if you're going to try and get there as fast as possible, you're probably not going to take the waterfront pathway. It's a shared pathway. As shared users, it's a lower speed. It's a more of a community amenity and a way to commute. The bike, yeah, exactly. The bike route, once we do the primary bike route with connection through downtown as well as Rosemont, that might be a quicker way for people to get there.
Yeah, and I'm not even concerned about quicker. I'm more thinking safety and making sense for traffic, for cars, and making sense for those on the bikes. I have a curiosity about the multi-use pathway maybe not being for e-bikes. That kind of peaks in my mind. If we're having pedestrians on there, those things just rip sometimes, right? So that's a technical term.
Some cities are looking at separating out e-bikes based on their category. So pedal assist, where you pedal and it moves forward, those are allowed to be on multi-use shared areas. And ones where you just have a throttle, those are road. Those are road bikes.
Yep.
So that's something that, we could look at. And cities are struggling with this as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Page.
Not to butcher it, but to build on it. Does it make any kind of sense, I think, to look at formalizing from that section at the bottom of the hall to the entrance or the beginning of this, some sort of bike lane? That's like, here, be here, and then that funnels you up onto, and the letdowns would all be appropriate to allow for that. But just to kind of say, here, you're over here, stay there. Is that workable?
Yep, absolutely.
That's my technical question.
Yes, absolutely. And we have talked about a bike network in that spot as more of a commuter, the quickest way to get somewhere. And then if you're meandering, maybe you would go along in front of the Prestige. So we have talked about that. And I think there is actually, and it's just in an incubation ideas phase, but I think there actually is enough right of way along there to consider it. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This wasn't this council or even the last council that, there was bike lanes planned for Hall Street. There was a bunch of pushback by the business community, so that was turned into parking, not bike lanes. So those original plans are still around somewhere, I'm sure. I don't know if in the end, I don't think we changed how we built the street, but I can't remember, there could be a possibility of reinstating some of that bike infrastructure on Hall Street that got removed.
I would just really recommend going to the users, like how are those folks that are using those bikes, and they're mostly primarily young people, how are they getting where they're going? What is their preferred route? They say they never use Pythagoras, but they cut every corner. So it'd be good to know what are they using and building it where it is being used or making it uncomfortable to use that way. Yeah.
I think that we're a ways away from the final plan here. So I think that staff have heard some really good ideas, and let's hope they come back with a really strong plan. Councillor Payne, you have, no, wait, Councillor Lockenberg hasn't spoken on this issue. We'll let him have a fly at it, and then we'll have Woodward, and then we'll have Payne.
I just want, should we move? Because we haven't moved anything yet.
Oh, I thought we moved it.
Wanna move the
Sorry. We moved it. Yep,
Have we moved it?
Yes, we moved.
yep.
If no one read. Okay.
Do you want to read?
Regan, who moved it?
Who moved it?
Councillor Page. Yeah, there you go. Did you read it?
No.
Did I not have you read it? Well, then read it.
Oh, read it.
Okay, just a second. It's all very tiny. No, I read this in detail. I read
you
this
did read it.
eloquently.
Because, yeah, you had a hard time saying 283,126, so I know you read it.
There were $2 in it.
So I'm going with Councillor Lockenberg, then I'm going with Councillor Payne and Councillor Woodward to assure you we've.
I'm good. You don't.
We've moved it, so.
Okay.
It sounds like we've got some agreement around the table, so I won't belabor this. I am in favor of this project, and I very much hear Councillor Tate's concerns about, especially looking to where the current traffic is and the leaning into the values related to commuters. I do think this is perhaps a different category in that it's that this is an amenity as much as it is a commuter route. And I think when the pier goes up and connecting the waterfront, and then there's new development on the waterfront, I can imagine more and more walking, biking traffic up and down the waterfront and creating a better experience for them, I think will be great for everybody. And the better it is, the more likely we'll, go from Fairview and take a walk to the dog park and back. So I think it's great, but I'd love to see, as Councillor Tate's saying, more engagement with certainly our young people who are biking increasingly all around town and just sort of tracking where they're going and making that a part of our ongoing active transportation planning. Thank you.
Sorry to belabor it.
Councillor Payne.
I'm going to leave the waterfront. Is that okay? I'm interested to know, I saw that we're pushing the Rosemont bike lane out to 2025, I'm presuming. Is that because of the opportunity with the paving here and the granting going that way? Or just trying to understand, because a lot of work went into getting that far with Rosemont, and it is definitely a community that a section of our community that we don't want to leave behind and make them think that we just don't love them anymore. I'd love to see it connected. So do we have something to hold out for the future there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we wanted to, move forward on this project. It's a great opportunity to sort of piggyback on some of the work that's going on down there. And at the same time, we also lost Matt Kuziak. So we're onboarding, and this is still a priority project, but it really needs dedicated staff invested in it and moving it forward. It's still on our work plan. We just need to regroup and strategize for how to get this project funded and bring back the What We Heard report to council. So that's on the books.
Perfect. Yeah, I just want to make sure the residents of Rosemont know that it's still moving forward, just maybe not at the pace we all would love to see it.
And sorry, maybe I'll just add, this is a great example of our work plans being finite, the room on them. And so this project, as both you mentioned, very opportunistic. The work's happening down there. It's great to be able to actually patch this section of the trail together such that the new section that isn't that great is one that Councillor Woodward spoke to along the mall. So will be a contiguous trail now, whereas before it just jumped into sidewalk. But I think it really just, makes clear the fact that we have finite work plans and trying to do it all, which I think staff always want to try and do. Often doesn't work out either for their own health and also for the ability to achieve our work plans. So that's a big part of this.
Okay, this resolution has been moved and seconded. Did you want to speak to it again, Councillor Page?
I did. I had a question that came up during conversation.
And your question is?
We had made some improvements to the pedestrian infrastructure coming off of Cedar, going through that development. If I've got the right one. Cedar. Yeah. Does this change those considerations and how we strengthen the vertical connection up from the entrance to the other bikeway? And are we looking at how that might serve in the overall bike network?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think we really looked at that quite closely. There's no lights there, so I think you'd have to kind of get off your bike and walk across. And from what I understand, Modi, the Ministry of Transportation, is not interested in putting lights at that intersection, but it will actually provide a pedestrian and bike connection there, and people will likely use it like that. But we haven't planned any infrastructure improvements on Cedar Street to date, but it's something we should look at.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Going once, going twice. Sold. All those in favor of the resolution as read. Okay, I think opposed, and that carries. Great. Moving on to item 14A, we have minutes of council committees and commissions. What have I got here? I've got finance. Does somebody want to move the accounts payable listing for receipt for information? Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Anybody see anything on there that they're curious about? And hopefully, if you did, that you sent off a message to the CFO beforehand so we could look it up. Sometimes there's the weirdest named companies that we are doing business with that sometimes catch my eye.
Sorry, did you skip one? You skipped the
What did I
thing about
skip?
it. You skipped the reports.
Oh,
the
sorry.
Minutes. Receive for minutes from the NAEDP.
Sorry.
That's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So, yeah, we'll do that first, sure.
Okay, so we're doing minutes?
We're gonna do the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. My computer's off, and now it's not gonna let me go back in again, so thank you for that, Councillor Tate. Any errors or omissions there that you see in those notes? Okay.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What's REDIP? Have I missed that somewhere?
Rural Empowered Drug, that one? Oh,
No,
REDRIP.
it's resident
I thought it was
directed.
Grants. That's the new name for
SIPs.
SIP grants.
So, but it's got a P on the end. So
No,
it's
it's-
program?
Is that the new SIP grant?
Improvement program.
It's the CBC grants.
Oh, that's right. That's
Thank you.
CPC
Yeah,
grant,
it didn't seem like that when I was reading the minutes.
Read it.
They changed, yeah, they changed all that.
REDIP. It was an acronym with no
Old,
explanation.
Rural, sorry, you're referring to the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program?
Yeah, read it. Yep, there you go. There you go.
Wow, he gets the prize.
Yeah. So
Rural,
that's, yeah.
can
the-
you just say it again, Chris? Sorry.
Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program.
Okay.
And that replaced the SIP.
So
No.
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 That's
Scratch it.
ready.
CBC, which used to be
Yeah.
the Southern Interior Development Trust,
Yeah.
has launched this program.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
They did that transportation study and report, and this came out of
Yeah.
that.
Sorry.
Okay. All those in,
Acronyms.
no, now Councillor Payne has a
Can I have
question.
another question? I can't. Okay. I'm just, I saw that something was moving forward with Happy Pad, but has there been any result with that yet? No. Okay. It said Happy Pad was going to move forward to reach out to Interior Health to see if they wanted to partner.
Councillor Page.
My recollection from the meetings has been that there has been a barrier to uptake when it comes to finding support within the Interior Health / larger business community, because I think part of the funding proposal had been to find, because part of it's partnering with employers and a pool of them and finding enough of them to sustain the actual service fee that goes with it.
Okay.
They have a marketing component to them that once they have a pool,
Yep.
they're advertising out.
My understanding is that Interior Health has not responded back to any of their requests, so I don't know where they would be.
Okay. I
I suggested that they actually reach out to Selkirk College as a potential partner as well, so yeah,
Yeah,
it looks
Selkirk.
like city manager wants to say something.
Yeah, Selkirk did work with them for a couple of years. And it is on the, like the last update I had with Interior Health, housing's still there. Happy Pad is still on the minutes. They haven't really, I don't think they moved too far with it, but it's still a line item that's on there.
Okay, and I know that in other areas of Canada, municipalities have partnered with Happy Pad. Is that anything that we considered?
Well, I think through economic development partnership is we would be.
That's how it was done. Okay,
Yeah,
got
we-
it.
that
Thank
would
you.
be us.
I just read the headlines in
Yeah.
a couple other communities, so that's how it happened. Thank you.
All those in favor accepting those minutes, moved by Counselor, no, I heard it's been moved and seconded. So everybody's in favor of that. Thank you. Okay, now finance report. So that was moved by Counselor Page and it was seconded by Counselor Tate. And did anybody see any questions that they had about the accounts payable list in finance? Okay, so that's been moved for receipt of information. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. And then item number 2 is a development services, building permit statistics we received for information. Any comments, questions? I think we had, now all of building services have left, so don't ask any questions because they all just left.
Too late to get that.
Actually, I do have a question that I was curious about in the other report, but I'm brave enough to ask it because I still don't know the answer. What are we paying to the Ministry of Finance? Is that what is that?
And that's going back to the,
No,
Finance.
it's on the big list here on the page that we're on.
okay.
We have a few things that we pay. Our water license agreement's
Oh,
probably
okay.
on there. Is this quite a big one that was on there?
It's just like
There's a
there's
117.
well, it's just that there's a
Yeah.
bunch of them.
Yeah.
So I was curious.
Yeah, lots of little things like that, like, yeah,
EST, yeah.
Oh, okay.
pay them as part of their, as tenants of this building. There's some O&M that goes back and forth. There's quite a few different branches of the ministry, but that big one on there is our water license payment for hydro.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so building, don't hear any questions about building permits. All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, so that's moved for receipt of information.
I did go backwards. Sorry.
Thank you. No, I was like, what does the finance have to do on the building permits? I was like,
You went faster than me that time.
okay.
Apologies.
So there was, is there any notices of motion? Seeing none, and there was no late items. So we're now at item number 17, that is the opinion of the council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of council and staff and any approved audiences be excluded from this meeting, and that the meeting of council continue under sections 91A and B for matters regarding the personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for a municipal award or honor.
Move.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. So 3-minute stand-up stretch
All right.
while we get everything changed over.
Figure this one out.